All right, are we ready, everyone? We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Today is Thursday, August 16th, 2018. It is just 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at the Sierra Room at 851 East William Street here in our very own Carson City. We're also on the public access channel on cable, if you get that, and I believe we're streaming as well on the internet. Could we have a roll call for the board? Good morning, Sue. How are you?
Good morning. Good. Supervisor About?
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski?
Here.
Supervisor Bagwell?
Here.
Supervisor Barrett?
Here.
Mayor Kroll?
Here.
Mayor Moore?
Thanks, Sue. And can we call on Fred Kingman of the Prodigal Church? Fred, come on up and get us started today.
The grace that is new, Lord, we thank you for our leaders. We thank you for those who serve our city, our mayor, our supervisors, our congressmen, our city employees, our first responders, our health workers, educators, business owners, and most of all our residents, Lord. Thank you for these men and women. Today, we ask, Lord, that this day would be marked with peace, Lord, that there would be understanding and wisdom, that you bless those here, Lord, that there might not be division, there might not be any misunderstanding. Let them be effective today, Lord, and not just have the image of effectiveness. Let them get done what needs to get done, and please bless them and help us to honor everybody, and especially those who lead us, Father. And I pray that all of us today would do what the prophet Micah commands us to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. Father, I pray that kindness and humility and justice would mark this chamber, and in it Christ to be glorified. In his name we pray. Amen.
While we're standing, last week we lost, some of us older folks here probably remember Senator Paul Laxalt, who lived out his life in D.C. He's a Carson City guy. So I'd like to have just a moment of silence to think about Senator Laxalt, how he lived his life. He was a wonderful man, and I think if we look back over his life, we can all take a little something from what he gave us in the state and how to lead our lives. So we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Could I, Ken, airport manager, can I have you lead the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move on to item 5, public comment. This is the time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this body. Anybody, any public comments? Anybody? A lot of peeps here today. No comments, huh? Okay, all right. We hold comments as we go through, so if you miss this one, there'll be opportunities once we go down the agenda. All right, let's take up 6, the minutes of August 2nd. Everybody had a chance to look at those? Motion's in order.
Move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for August 2nd, 2018 as presented.
There's a motion and a second. I've got to get my electronics going here.
We're having trouble, Mr. Mayor, so I'll have to... I'll
All right.
your votes if you guys-
All right. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. We'll have the electronic vote here probably a little bit here, so we're having trouble with that one. On the agenda, this item 7, board members, any changes to the agenda? Anybody? We okay? All right, so then, city manager, anything?
No changes.
You sure?
Positive.
Okay.
As of this moment, yeah.
All right, then unless there's, and hearing no objection, we will take the agenda as published. We'll adopt the agenda as published for today. We're supposed to have my neighbor and Congressman, Mark Amity, here this morning. Is Mark here yet? Not yet. Sheriff, can you send somebody out for him? No, I'm
Sure.
kidding. He would do that. He'd send somebody out for you.
You on him?
I figured you would. All right. So we'll whenever he gets here, we'll interrupt and hear from the good congressman. So let's all move down to the floor and present the length of service awards. Okay. Okay, this is for 5 years. Where's Graham Dollarhide? Graham? Oh, there he is. Okay, over there next to the DA. How are you doing this morning?
Good, thank you.
How's everything going on in the transit world, in the transportation world?
Great.
Great?
Ridership's up.
Huh?
Ridership's up.
Ridership's up?
Yeah.
All right, all right. You know, sometimes the people don't see that. I mean, they see an empty bus going on, they say, hey, what's going on? But I think the last time I looked, what is the ridership? About 170,000?
We had 195.
195,000?
Fixed route, and then another about 30 on paratransit.
Okay, a lot of transports. So Graham, on behalf of all of us here, we'd like to show our appreciation for 5 years of service and dedication to our community, making it a better place to live, work, play, and get around. So on behalf of all of us, please accept that. Come on up here. Keith, how you doing, Keith?
Good.
For 5 years. You know, I was telling Keith on the way in, you know, sometimes you see the public works folks out in the streets, and sometimes people say, you get a little grumpy and say, you're disrupting the traffic and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, you see them out there all the time. They're out doing, whether it's rain, sleet, or snow, and particularly here lately with all the smoke and stuff going on. And we're really proud of you guys. I mean, keep up the good work, and we look good because of you folks. So, in appreciation for your 5 years of service, please accept this certificate of longevity and our appreciation for you, Keith. Come on.
Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, how you doing out there? Are we about done with the wastewater?
No, I love that job.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
This is the only one that love. Okay. All right. You sure there's nothing wrong with you now?
Oh, no. Didn't get to me yet.
All right. Jennifer, you work in one of the most critical places in Carson City, because if the system out there doesn't work, we have troubles. Yeah, big troubles. So, and on behalf of your community and all of us here in the room and your Board of Supervisors, we'd like to give you this certificate of appreciation for 5 years of service to us, and we look forward, and thanks for letting us talk to you a little bit about the center out there. I mean, what is it called now? The wharf, or what is it?
The Carson City Water Resource Recovery Facility.
Whoa.
Wharf. Yeah,
Wharf?
That's short.
Okay, it should be woof or something.
Woof,
I don't know.
okay.
All right, come on. All right, thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you so
All
much.
right, all right. Joshua. Where's Joshua? Is he? Oh, there he is. All right. Oh, yeah, don't worry about that. It's see, we got some other cops here today too. Some of our finest here. So, Joshua's one of our deputy sheriffs. He's wearing his detective. You know, when the stuff hits the fan and somebody needs to know what happened, this is the guy that goes out and finds out, you know, what's gone on. So, and we all know that that's not an easy job sometimes. As a matter of fact, you know, you kind of see some of the bad things that go on in this world. So, on behalf of all of us in Carson City, Joshua, thank you for helping make Carson City a better place to live, work, play, and be safe, and know that, you know, we've got folks like you and some others that are coming up here today, and the sheriff, of course, you know, to keep us safe in this community. So thanks very much. All right. All right. Come on. Come on up. Anthony. All right. Got your team up here too? How you doing? Come on over here. So let's get out here in the middle. So there he is. All right. Look at that. All right. You know these dogs. They look beautiful. They look sharp and everything. But it's always a reminder. You know, these dogs when the poop hits the fan, they can get going. Literally sometimes. Yeah, literally sometimes. All right. Is it Anthony or Tony? Which would either one? You know, we're obviously with the K-9 unit, and you know, you've got kind of double duty in a way. I mean, you got K-9 to look after and do things, and also, you know, you're doing your thing on protecting the public. All you folks in our uniformed service are wonderful individuals, Anthony, and we'd just like to thank you for making Carson City a better place. As I mentioned to Joshua, you know, there are those in this room, and it's not just it's a lot of folks in the public safety environment who can see a different side of Carson City sometimes, and it's important that we all remember that, you know, while we live in a wonderful community, there are areas where there are times when we need that we need to pay attention to. Let me just say it like that. It's probably the more correct way of saying it. So, on behalf of a grateful community, let us give you this certificate for 5 years. And you want to say anything?
No.
All right. There you go. All right, come on up here. Here. I'll give you
Okay.
that. Come on. Can you come up here?
Sure, wants me to say something.
All right.
All right. So this is our newest dog in the K-9 unit. I know Sergeant Lowe wanted to thank the Board of Supervisors and all of you for getting us this 5th K-9 spot. This is Beck. He's 2, and he's being kind of special this morning, so as you guys can tell.
All right. What's your name? Is it Beck? Beck. All right, Beck. All right, you take that and go back there and get a picture. Beck, get in the front there. All right. Another one of our finest, Brett. How you doing, Brett?
Good, how you doing?
Oh, here comes. Okay, what's this dog's name?
This is Ivo.
Ivo.
Yep.
Ivo.
Mm-hmm.
IVO.
IVO.
All right. He looks more than 2 years old.
It's actually his 10-year award, not mine.
Well, I go shake his hand, but I think he might not. You know, these dogs do a whole lot more than just sit down and shake. You know, it's another one of these. You know, the K-9 dogs. You know, I know they're always just good to see. I mean, because, you know, they're trained dogs, and I know we have them in the military as well, and, you know, they help out a lot in our community. So, Brett, on behalf of all of us, thank you for your 10 years of service, and thank Ivo for, I don't know how long you've been here, Ivo, but
6 years.
6 years. Your 6 years of service for keeping Carson City safe and making sure that, you know, we all know that there are people out there taking care of us. So, Brett, come on up here, and we'll give you that. Did you want to say anything?
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you.
Oh.
Can you introduce the other 2 dogs? This is the one opportunity that we
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay, go.
So I will introduce the other 2 dogs. That's Jimmy Surratt in the back. And if you guys want to step up there, and then you want to bring up Blue, go ahead and bring up Blue. There you go, Grumpy Pants. All right. So these other two dogs here, this is 4 of our 5 dogs are here today. This is Tico and Deputy Surratt. And this is Blue, our other new replacement canine for Rex. I'm sure you guys heard about his retirement party. Blue is an odd-looking dog. He's a blue Belgian Malinois. So Blue and Tico.
Okay. Let's all come up here. Come on up here. Let's see if we can come up here and we'll put the dogs in front if we can. So, come on up here, all of you, come on up. There. Yeah. Rachel, can you get them so we get a good picture? I'll get her. Okay. All right. Now. Whoop. All right, Tony. How you doing, Tony? Am I going to see you tonight? Are you going to the wilderness graduation? Yes. All right. You're going to see me. All right. You know, Tony, for all of you, you'd probably know this, but he's a juvenile probation officer, and he sees some things for, you know, young individuals in our community who've made the wrong choice, and it's their, you know, responsibility, one, to tell them they made the wrong choice, but also to lead young folks into a situation where they're now making the right choices. And that's how communities are built, Tony. I mean, I know sometimes, you know, you guys are always out there doing stuff, but you know, if we can teach our youth to make the right choices in life, we're all going to be a lot better off. And you folks out there at JPO do a heck of a job, so keep it up. And so, you know, 15 years. Have you been doing that for 15 years over at JPO? Wow. Let me say a double thank you. For your 15 years, please accept your community's appreciation, the board's appreciation, and all of us here in this room for one, not only just keeping us safe, but focusing on the youth in this community so that, you know, people have learn that choices are important, and that you know, life can be a lot better if you make the right choices. And so that's what you folks do. Couldn't be more proud. I'll see you tonight and hopefully have a few more words I'll think about a little bit more today. So, okay, Tony? All right.
Thank you.
All right. Is that it?
So,
all right. Yeah, go.
Sorry. If we have any family members here or coworkers who want to get in the picture, hop on in, please. We'd like that.
Anybody? Come on.
Actually, I'm afraid of it.
I'm going to see if I can get the congressman in here too. Hang on. Mark down there. Come on, Mark. Don't be afraid of the dogs up here now. Would you mind getting a picture with all of us here? No, I don't. Come on. Come on. Oh, boy.
That's right.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Mark, I can't see you. You're hiding.
That was the idea.
Jimmy, want
I'll lean a little.
Okay. Smile. Jeff, look at me. Perfect. Thank you. I know.
It's actually check. 30 minutes only check.
Come on up here, sit down, Mark. We're going to...
We got Molly Drive, and our dog's name was Molly. Yep, from a puppy all the way to... Couldn't see over. Oh, that's cute.
Okay,
Deal with it, Brad.
Congressman Amodei is here this morning. He was next door in the gym this morning, working out, I think. We are proud to have you here this morning, Mark. And who in the room doesn't know Mark Amodei, Congressman Amodei? Who doesn't know him? See that, Mark? Everybody.
Or who's sorry that they do? Yeah.
Well, you know, he's got a lot of accolades. And let me see. Right now, you're on the which committees you'll tell us what committees you're on. But Mark is also Army veteran, JAG, and he's a Carson City guy. I'm proud to say he's my neighbor. He's a past president of the Mining Association. He's a United States Army Judge Advocate General. Served in the Nevada Assembly from Pardon me?
They can't hear you.
Served in the 1996 to 1998 State Assembly and the State Senate from 1998 to 2010. He was the President Pro Tem of the Nevada State Senate in 2003 through 2008. Member of the Colorado River Commission, member of the Uniform State Law Commission, member of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency Legislative Oversight Committee, and obviously a congressman for the United States House of Representatives. It's our pleasure to have you, Mark. Thanks very much for coming, and let us know what you've always got good pearls of wisdom. So,
Thank you, Your Honor. For your record, Mark Amodei representing, I think I broke it. For your record, Mark Amodei representing Nevada's original congressional district. So the number's 2, but this district was in existence long before all of our colleagues from south of Tonopah, I believe, where some of your roots are, Your Honor. I want to just take a minute and first of all recognize you, Supervisor About, and to say thank you for your public service. This is probably the last time that I will appear in front of you in your official capacity, but too seldom do people say, hey, thanks for doing what you do, and I won't go into putting up with the guy that you're married to or anything like that, but thank you for your public service both in and out of office. Part of the fabric of the community, and it's neat to say that home has folks like you, so thank you very much. Your Honor, as has been the custom, we try to appear in front of the Board of Supervisors as well as County Commission's going to be seeing all your pals in Douglas County up at the lake later this afternoon to just kind of give a federal update in terms of what's going on, what we think affects you directly or not, but also for an opportunity to, in accordance with the open meeting law, if there are concerns, federal concerns from your perspective, that we can facilitate that in a pretty transparent manner. I want to thank you also, Your Honor, for the fact that I was able to, while at the Tahoe Summit last week, mention that there was a problem with garbage pickup on Sunset Way, and Carson City being the kind of place it was, it's like, way to handle that. We got to stick together, those of us.
Well, so everybody knows, we're in the middle of the Tahoe Summit, and Congressman Amodei is at the podium. He's the master of ceremonies, and he takes the time. He says, this is the time that I'm going to talk to that guy down there about garbage collection in Carson City. So everybody, we're at the Tahoe Summit, and Mark is here talking about what we're doing here locally. And Mark, that's who you are. I mean, you've always been down here with all of us, and so it's a great pleasure to have you here. And I thought it was really wonderful. Show people that we can all. There's a way to do things in this world where we can all respect each other and get along and have some fun at the same time. So.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Your Honor. I think the line I used was, I was talking about Senator Feinstein and how she'd been the mayor of San Francisco, but the city's mayor was over there. That's Bob Kroll of Carson City, to let the folks in the city know that the real city was here. And then I just followed it up with, hey, is this a bad time to talk about waste management? I gotta. But nice catch on that. You were like, oh, I've already handled that. It's like, that's good. Way to go. Because, when you get to be my age, garbage pickup is pretty darn important. I mean, if it goes well, it's a good week. Okay, now for why I'm really supposed to be here. I want to give you just some brief overviews. I don't want to take a ton of time, but nonetheless, to kind of let you know stuff that everybody kind of has their finger on the pulse of from time to time. First of all, we're nearing the end of the appropriations process. The 115th Congress ends December 31st. And by the way, if I happen to say anything critical about the Senate, it's meant in a very bipartisan manner, because I think when you're doing nothing, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you're still doing nothing, so I feel free in talking about that. So anyhow, no offense to Catherine or Dean, but this is a transparent business, and so there you go. We're nearing the end of the appropriations process. If things are going by the book, then on September 30th, all 12 of those traditional appropriations bills are passed, and the federal government runs for another 12 months because we're on annual appropriations cycle. The House has out of committee all 12 of their appropriations bills. We have sent 6 or 7 of them over to the Senate. The Senate, by the way, as you'll recall at the Tahoe thing, Senator Murkowski was saying, hey, we sent over 3 or 4 in a big group, and they were celebrating, and I was on pretty good behavior to say, when you do that once every 4 or 5 years, praise Jesus, it's great that you finally did it, quadrannually, or whatever the phrase is for it. But anyhow, I think the White House has indicated they weren't real impressed with the usual Band-Aid approach, which is a continuing resolutions and things like that to take you through the year in chunks. The reason, obviously, as you folks can appreciate with your budget responsibility, is when you talk to your departments and it's like, well, we don't know what we're going to be doing in 6 months, but here's enough money to go for 3. Not a great way to run a railroad, a government, or a business. So we are hopeful that we will have actually appropriations bills. They'll probably be combined in minibuses, which is instead of each one of those 12 coming up individually, they'll be combined into groups of 3 and 4, and you'll go like that. As with any situation like that, there will be things, when you put them together like that, there will be things that I, for instance, may not love in the bill. But quite frankly, so it's perfectly clear to everybody, it's like if 95% of the bill is stuff that we need to do, and quite frankly, if shutting everything down because we disagree about 5% is an option, that's probably not my cup of tea. So, for instance, in the last omnibus where there was defense spending, there was interior, all that stuff was wrapped in there, and there were critics of various provisions, and that's fine. That's the process. However, it's just like anything else. We can all find one thing that we don't like. Maybe we can find 2 or 3. But if it's against about 500, and there's only 5 that are whatever, then obviously we look at that and try to find the way forward, but we don't shut the lights out and lock the door because of that. So I say that to say this: if there are funding issues of concerns to this jurisdiction, let us know so that there will be opportunities in that minibus process or omnibus process to get the appropriations going, where if it's one of the areas where you're going, hey, we heard the funding's going to be gone on this or it's going to be cut on that, let us know. The more time we have, the more responsive we can be. Not that there's been a problem with that in the past, Your Honor. I just want to kind of reinforce that. Lands bills, nothing too active in terms of your neighborhood right now. We expect Douglas to finally give us the okay for a draft. It's late in the session to introduce it, but nonetheless, it's one of those things where for the 116th Congress, if you can have it out there for a while, and it's been, if you will, on the street for 4 or 5 months, it allows you to get a jump start on it in terms of scheduling committee hearings and actually processing bills. Pershing County has a land bill that we heard and passed. Did a great job, bipartisan. As a matter of fact, we did it on, I think, we did it on the suspension calendar on the floor. So it's been over to the Senate. They actually had a hearing. Praise Jesus. Both of our senators did a great job during the hearing. So we'll see if the Senate actually sends any lands bills out, whether it's in a large package, a small package, or whatever. But quite frankly, there's always a few things around the edges, but the bill was a consensus bill, and so we hope to have that off the table, if you will, by the end of the 115th Congress. We're doing a technical corrections bill for previous Nevada lands bills. The White Pine one needs some changes in dates because, quite frankly, contrary to popular perception, in Nevada lands bills where they allow jurisdictions to sell land, quite frankly, I'll use an example, the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act. Turned 20 this year. Probably the most successful public lands legislation in the nation. Does all sorts of things for funding, conservation, resource things throughout the state. That bill 20 years ago authorized the sale of over 70,000 acres around Las Vegas. After 20 years, they've sold about 35,000. Okay. My point in telling you that is that despite some of the stereotypes, to have sold federal land that is surrounding Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, or whatever, to have sold 35,000 acres in one of the most dynamic real estate markets in the nation, but for sure in the Southwest, is not exactly runaway development, blah, 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 when you look at that. We think it's big by our standards in the rest of the state, but my point is this, it is possible to dispose of federal lands around municipalities in a responsible manner that, quite frankly, raises the bar for everybody when you use those proceeds to do neat things locally and in the state. So these tune-up, one of them is Lincoln County, one of them is White Pine County. It's extending dates because, quite frankly, they got to the end of the dates where they thought they'd sell their stuff, and they haven't sold much of it at all. For instance, Lincoln County, I think, authorized 100,000 acres to be sold. They've sold less than 10,000 in 20 years. No offense to the people in Lincoln County and their real estate values, but the reality is they want to kind of keep doing what they're doing, but I don't think it represents an imminent threat of runaway development and resource irresponsible activity. So we're going to be doing that. If it's the city of Henderson has a piece in it, Story County's got a little piece in it, but the point in bringing it up is if any of your staff is like, hey, for when we did the Carson City one, if we could use a little tweak here or there, that is truly a technical correction, then that bill basically goes straight to work session in front of the Natural Resources Committee and gets to the floor pretty lickety-split. I don't usually show up anywhere in August of the second year of a Congress and say, hey, we're going to start something and we think it's going to be good. It's like you must have overserved yourself if you said that. But this is one instance where I think it's a viable tool and there is time to do it, and so we've got the foundation set for that. Before I go on to the next thing, I do want to introduce Molly Lowe, this nice young lady who I made come up and sit next to me. She is my legislative director, relatively new on the job. We stole her from Ken Calvert's staff. Ken Calvert is a colleague that represents a district around Riverside, California. He is also on the Appropriations Committee. He is also the chairman of the Interior Appropriations Committee. So we're real happy to have Molly and use her excellent relations with her old boss as our legislative director. She's out here, as we do with all of our staff in August, contrary to what Laura Ingram would have you believe, that I'm on vacation working on my golf game, which if any of you who've seen me golf know that I'm not working on my golf game. And it's even left-handed. It's easy right-handed. Come around to the south side, it's a hard game. But anyhow, we rotate all staff through in August. Molly's here for about 10 days to basically go out, reach out, work with people that we're working on issues, gives everybody a good point of reference in terms of face-to-face stuff, more familiar with how things are on the ground and stuff like that. So I am pleased and proud that Molly is on the staff in a leadership position and is doing a great job so far. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't ask her what she thinks of me. We'll just leave it as I'm happy to have her here, and we don't want to get into her initial impressions of who her boss is. I mean, I did the same thing for you, Your Honor, so let's, now that the shoe's on the other foot, let's have a little reciprocity.
What happens when you make that? The first thing that comes to my mind is, well, maybe we ought to ask.
Yeah. Maybe you should talk to her offline and say, so do you have any spare time while you're here? Maybe we could have a breakfast or something like that. The last overall thing I'm going to talk about is we continue to keep a close eye, because obviously the economy is kind of important to everybody. And so the wrinkle in the latest sense is some of the trade issues. And so while, we've spent a lot of time on immigration, on health care, on resource issues, stuff like that kind of reflects the district and the state. the economy is one where obviously that's important for everyone. It's nice that we're enjoying a resurgence back in Western Nevada and the nation, but we do have this little footnote now going on as far as the trade policy stuff. So, and actually, a month ago we had a young lady from the Canadian Consulate's office in Los Angeles who informed me that in her area, which is Southern California, Arizona, Nevada, I'm not sure it was bigger than that, but anyhow, the #1 congressional district in that area for exports to Canada was this one. Now, I'd like to tell you, you guys are all nodding like, yeah, we knew that. I didn't know that. So, I mean, my first reaction was, seriously? But obviously, Canada's affected by all the trade stuff and the tariff stuff too. So I bring it up to say this. It's one of the things where we've taken the view of, I'm not an international negotiator in trade or steel prices or ag commodities or anything else like that. And we're willing to show a little bit of patience, but what we've said publicly is, you know what, by the fall, which in this part of the country is September and October, if there's no movement and we start to see erosion of the political of the economic resurgence that we're experiencing, it's going to be one of them things where you're going to have 435 geniuses maybe trying to help you out with your trade policy, which is not what I would want. So I want you to know that we're keeping an eye on it. If you have specific issues that come, we've been able to basically go to the administration on a case-by-case basis in some instances for businesses to say, hey, you need to take these guys off the list or this thing off the list, and here's why. We haven't done it as a, hey, will you do me a favor, but we've provided some solid foundation and we've gotten some relief for some of those folks. Bottom line is, as an overall policy, it's like, hey, we got to kind of be somewhere where we're not basically hoping that we're not the first ones to starve to death instead of the last ones. And so with that, if there are questions, concerns, anything else like that, let us know. We continue to spend a lot of time on veterans issues just because it's one of the things that you do at your level. The state does at their level. You never say mission accomplished. We continue to try to provide some movement in the Congress on the immigration issues. We had 2 votes recently. So there's obviously neither one of the bills passed, but at least we're moving in the right direction because, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, but there is a line in there that says the Congress will regulate a system of naturalization, which means, no kidding, it's your job, Congress, to do it. And so I think it's the height of hypocrisy to criticize the last administration for doing executive orders, and then when this administration turns to that same tool because we're not doing anything, it's like, I won't go any farther in that, but I think you get where I'm coming from and where I'm headed to. We also continue to spend a lot of time on health care, something that affects everybody, quite frankly, no matter where you're at, in terms of trying to get the Congress back into the game, at least on our side of it. As you know, the last bill was about a year ago, or maybe a little more, failed by a couple votes in the Senate. Not that the House bill was the answer, but it was a start. It needed help, it needed improvements, but I think we all agree the status quo is a pretty big challenge. And so when we talk about, for instance, we came from talking with Heather Korbelik, who runs the state exchange, a couple of days ago. Last year the increase for premiums in that was 48%. And by the way, Nevada wasn't real unique in that sense. Kind of stabilized for this year, but nonetheless there's more work to be done. Generally, I'm of the opinion that the closer to home those solutions come, probably the more effective that'll be. So you'll see some aggregation among, the Chamber of Commerce down in Clark County starting to do some stuff. Some of the large employers down there are starting to create their own, if you will, insurance companies. I use that phrase loosely, to insure their own folks. And I think it's just one of the things where providers are happier when they don't have to do the same thing that somebody in Philadelphia or Kansas City or Tallahassee does. And so the closer to home they get, the better. Nobody leave the room and say that means states and cities are going to have to pay for it. There's a lot of federal money in health care. I expect there will always be a lot of federal money in health care. But the idea is to get that money to people who administer their programs on a state or even smaller basis and let them basically exploit their markets in a way that's more effective than somebody in an office building in Washington, D.C. With that, Your Honor, I'm happy to attempt to respond to any questions you have.
I don't know if there are any questions up here, Mark, but let me say, you mentioned Southern Nevada Public Lands Act. You and I both know, and the board up here, and I think, Carson City's taken advantage of that. And it's done some great things up here. I mean, just the sale of Las Vegas land, the money comes up here. And so, I think we fully understand, the importance of what that act has done for all of us. And last but not least, Mark, I want to say a personal thanks for helping us out on that Tiger grant, that $7.5 million Tiger grant. It's a big deal for our community here. And, you and I grew up here when the roads were, Lori was here too, and I guess everybody was here, Roads were a little, dirt. They weren't pretty good. They weren't very good for even stagecoaches. But that money will allow us to do a complete street reconstruction from the Ormsby House all the way down to the Spooner Junction, and it's that'll complete taking care of one entrance to the city. And I know Brad and others on the board here, the concept is to make sure that all our entrances into the community are beautiful and inviting, so that we have a community where people want to come, and if they want to, they can live here. But we want people to know that this is a community that has pride and likes to show off its pride. So I'd like to thank you for those. It's a big deal, Mark.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning that. I need to make you aware of one more thing. This is my first time in town in a long time. I'm getting used to all this electricity and stuff like that. Anyhow. One of the things that's happened at the Department of Interior level, as you may or may not recall, when Mick Mulvaney submits a budget on behalf of the administration, it's like, so you have to submit a budget, so they submit one. And I don't think it's a secret, but if it is, it isn't anymore. So they submit a budget, they comply with their requirement, and for their value judgment reasons, it's like, okay, so we think it's balanced, or it's pretty close to balanced. Now, that budget, and it's no different for this administration than other ones, basically it's like, well, there it is, check the box, have a nice day, and do you know somebody will give us a deal on recycling the paper? However, what they've done the last couple times is they've stripped the SNPLMA account to use that money to balance the budget. Mick, whose brother actually lives in Washoe County, who I haven't met, but I'm guessing I'll like better than Mick. We give each other a bad time all the time. So we've had some discussion. I go, what are you doing? I mean, not that anybody cares about the law anymore, but first of all, it's illegal and blah, blah. And he said, I won't tell you what he said, but the gist of it is this. They went through and they looked at accounts that had large balances that didn't have a lot of activity. And so I don't think the message is not, if you got a bunch of money in the bank, please go spend it. I mean, that's, everybody's got their fiscal equilibrium or whatever. But the message definitely is, because it happened, the last round of SNPLMA projects that were approved by the committee here, basically the Department of Interior went back and said, why don't you go down another 6 projects? In other words, fund, instead of 10, fund 15 or whatever the number was, which, and by the way, that doesn't bother me a lot, because quite frankly, they didn't say, here's a project nobody knows about and it's my favorite one, fund it. They said, we respect your process and you've made a list and you've prioritized it, but we think you should go farther down the list with funding. It wasn't an amount that basically said, hey, guess what, the account's 33% smaller than it was, but it created a little more churn and activity, if you will, in that account. And so the reason that I tell you that is, for purposes of Carson City and other jurisdictions going forward in the SNPLMA process, know that there is some pressure to basically be a little more active in using those funds and getting them out for those purposes. The second part of that is I've talked with Congresswoman Titus, and we're going to go in front of that board and basically give them the thing like, listen, we're not telling you what to do, we're not telling you that we think we could use your discretion better, but what we are telling you is there is some pressure there in terms of looking at those accounts and seeing how active they are. So if you're building up and I don't know what the number is, so don't hold me to it, but if you're building up $1 billion balance instead of, you know, a $500 million balance and more of it on the ground doing the stuff that everybody wants you to do, then they're going to get some look-sees as evidenced by what happened this cycle, which was fund some more of your projects. And so I'm going to say that there's probably an opportunity there. Forewarned is forearmed. If your staff needs any more specifics or work on the ground, footwork on the ground back there to make sure that you've got a 20/20 focus on it, then we're a resource for that.
That message has been received. Molly, we're going to be talking to you about that?
Yes.
All right, because I know I can see some of our staff thinking, you know, we could help satisfy that activity issue on the snipple of the funds. So
I would be shocked if anybody actually had a project they thought was worthy for, you know, resource related, but, you know, maybe there's one or two out there.
4 or 5.
Four or five.
Probably 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Anybody get anything from Mark? I'd like to, if we can, go down and get a picture. Is that all right? Sure. All right. Mark, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming, and I know you do this every so often. You know, thanks for keeping an eye on Carson City for us, and you know, we're really proud, you know, to have a local boy here that takes care of us back there, and I know you always appreciate coming home. So.
It's nice to be home.
Yeah, and so let us take a picture down.
Everybody looks good. Everybody looks good in the picture with me.
Oh, God. I can see his head hasn't changed much.
Yeah, plant potatoes, you harvest potatoes. Did I break that camera? It wouldn't be the first one.
We're going to be in recess for 10 minutes. So he's talking about my driving. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. We'll be back. Okay.
Hi, it's good
Thanks.
to meet you.
Molly, good to meet you.
Yeah, I'll
Thanks.
grab my card actually for you.
How you doing? Good to see you again. How you doing? I haven't seen you for 12 hours.
Hi, how are you? Oh, good. Good to meet you. How are you?
Great. May I have one of those?
Yes, of course.
Will you be at the dinner at Mark's Speakeasy?
Yeah, I will be there.
Okay, is it LOWE?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put you down there. Okay. I know
I
another.
went to something doing a presentation. I looked at it. That's
Nice meeting you.
We're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order, and we'll now take up item number 8, the consent agenda. And let me see if there's any board member want anything pulled from the consent agenda? We okay? Member of the public, anybody want something pulled from the consent agenda? All right, let me, before we take a vote, let me read this and I'll vote on it. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. Steve Takis is legal counsel to the Airport Authority. I work with Steve at the law firm from which I retired, but no longer have a substantial and continuing business relationship with Steve. Therefore, a reasonable person in my position would not be materially affected by this past relationship. Additionally, Steve is here he's not here this morning. I don't see him here. This is an airport grant issue.
We didn't do consent yet.
Pardon me?
We're doing this before consent?
Yeah, I've got to do it just on the consent because there's one on the...
Oh, there's one on it.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah. But I'm making this disclosure, and because I did not have a disqualifying conflict, I'll be voting on this matter. So with that disclosure, any other disclosures on the consent agenda? I don't see any. Hang on a second. We'll be there. On the consent agenda?
No, she's on the next item.
Okay. All right. Hang on here a minute. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Did you have a motion?
Oh, I guess I need a motion. Talking starting to go like Amity here. Just prove it.
Get her done.
Get her done, All right. I'll take a motion, yeah.
Okay.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
I would like to, I move to approve the consent agenda consent items as published on the agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. All right. Let's now take up item number 14. And I'll make the same, incorporate by reference the same disclosure I made on the consent agenda. So we're on item number 14. We have the president, the chair of the Airport Authority here, and also the airport manager. Come on up, Ken. Tell us how we're going to accept $384,187.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank you guys for hearing this. You probably recall that we were here on July 5th to ask for a grant for $352,000. Well, the FAA in its benevolence offered us another $32,906 to upgrade our AWAS equipment, which is the automated weather observation system. And so we're coming back to you to ask the board to accept $384,187. The matching grant or matching funds of 6.25% comes out to $25,612, which we have budgeted for.
What is it? Things seem to be going all right out at the airport.
Bright as rain, sir.
Bright as rain?
Yeah.
What's the next coming up out there? Any big issues? Any big?
No, we don't have anything big on operational side. We are working on a couple of programs to get some more community involvement. We have a discussion that we brought up last night at the board meeting about a Veterans Day fun run out on the airfield, and trying to utilize that to get the community out and involved and see the airport, but also to raise some funds for veterans groups.
And you were in the room when Congressman Amade was talking about one of our largest trading partners for this region is Canada.
Right.
Keep that in mind when we're doing some economic development out there at the airport.
You betcha, sir.
All right. I suspect others up here know what's going on with that better and more than I do, but I think it's word to the wise. All right. Anything else? Board member? Yeah, questions in order, of course.
Good morning, how are you? Good morning. Would you clarify for me, what is this grant going to allow us to do at the airport?
Well, there's two portions for the grant.
Okay.
The one was the ASOS equipment, but the primary source of the grant is for the reconstruction of taxiways Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, which include crack seal. There'll be some saw cutting, some replacement of pavement, slurry seal, and then restriping.
Why don't you describe where the taxiways are? I mean,
Well, the taxiways provide the access from parking to the runway or from the runway to parking. And so there's two parallel taxiways, one on the north and one on the south side. Those are Alpha and Delta. They're full length of the runway, so they're about 10,000 feet between the two. Then you have a taxiway that's diagonal that starts on the northwest corner of Gonai and Arrowhead, Charlie, that goes northeast up to taxiway Bravo. And Bravo's a north-south taxiway that is from Arrowhead gate number 4 all the way down to the self-serve fuel island. So those are the primary areas. And there's two taxi lanes within the Jet Ranch area, taxi lane Foxtrot and Echo. And so those were last done when the runway reconstruction was done. And then on our capital improvement program, we also have requests out for some, the south ramp reconstruction. They did the north ramp, I think, a year and a half ago. So the south ramp will be next, and then the runway will get also rehab as also on our capital project list.
Any other questions of Mr. Moen? Okay. Public comment, anybody? I don't see any motions or Supervisor About.
I move to approve and accept the 2018 FAA Airport Improvement Grant 3-32-0004-32 in the approximate amount of $384,187 for use in the rehabilitation of taxiways A, B, C, and D, and taxi lanes E, F, and Access Road, and AWOS upgrade, and execute such documents as may be necessary to receive the funds on behalf of the Carson City Airport Authority.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Go do good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Law, for chairing. Good deal. Good stuff. Okay. All right. Let's take up item 15. This is to consider the adoption of a resolution consenting to the relinquishment of land in land transfer between Carson City and the state of Nevada of approximately 15,000 square feet on Sierra Vista Lane. Ms. Hicks, you're here to tell us what we're doing here and why we have to do this. And
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the record, Stephanie Hicks, Real Property Manager. Back in May of 2009, the Department of Transportation relinquished portions of State Route 513 to Carson City, and that included portions of East 5th Street, Carson River Road, and Pinion Hills Drive. During our recent reconstruction of Sierra Vista Lane, we realized there was a remnant parcel out there that NDOT still owned. Sierra Vista Lane bisects that parcel. And so we've had conversations with NDOT, and they have offered to relinquish that parcel to the city. It's no longer something that they need to retain.
question, Supervisor Bunkowski.
So the resolution requires that we accept the relinquishment subject to all leases and licenses, so we've confirmed that there are none?
Yes, that's correct. I had done some preliminary research myself, and there's nothing recorded against the property, but I also confirmed with NDOT that there are no easements, leases, or licenses on this property.
Any other questions? Public comment? Don't see any. Well done, thanks, Stephanie. All right, we'll take a motion.
Resolution number?
2018 R26.
I move to adopt Resolution 2018 R26 consenting to a relinquishment and land transfer agreement between Carson City and the State of Nevada Department of Transportation for an approximately 15,203 square foot parcel upon Sierra Vista Lane, also known as Assessor Parcel Number 010-116-01.
There's a motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's take up item 16, and I'll introduce this first, Brad, and give you disclosure. This is a possible action to introduce on first reading an ordinance approving an amendment to a development agreement between Carson City and Roventini LLC to extend the tentative planned unit development map due to expire September 6, 2019 for the development known as Clearview Ridge. It would be a one-year extension, as I understand it. Supervisor Bunkowski has a disclosure. Brad?
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I am a partner in the real estate brokerage firm of NAI Alliance Carson City. In that capacity, my firm is working in collaboration with Mark Neufer, who is the project manager for Roventini LLC, on an unrelated project in Douglas County, where my firm represents the property owner to which Mr. Neufer is providing counseling services or consulting services. However, neither myself nor nor any other person in my firm is exercising any authority over Mr. Newfer in the course of his consulting services. Those consulting services are separate and distinct from my firm. Neither myself nor my firm have any employer-employee or joint venture relationship with Mr. Newfer. I am making this disclosure in the interest of full transparency, but because I do not have any involvement in the dealings of Roventini LLC, and also because a reasonable person in my position would not be materially affected by this relationship with Mr. Newfer, which arises from a wholly unrelated project, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Okay. All right. Ms. Hicks, hope you're gonna take us through this?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. Can we have the
I called her
PowerPoint?
Hope Hicks. I was thinking the national.
I didn't even hear it, so it's okay.
Hope so. I must have been thinking about, the news this morning, so I don't know.
Okay, the subject property is known as Clearview Ridge. It's located west of Cochise between West Roventini and West Overland Streets. The tentative planned unit development was approved on September 21st, 2006. There have been a number of extensions over the years due to a soft housing market, and the staff reports outlines that chronology. Now that the housing market is stronger, the property owner is having difficulty getting the local agencies to get all the plans done because everyone's just really busy now. So you received a letter with the late material yesterday, and I apologize that wasn't in the packet. That probably would have explained a lot, so I apologize for that, but we did get that to you, which outlines the justification for the request. Given that this is a PUD, the staff doesn't find that the extension would create any nonconformities. Therefore, the staff is supportive of the one-year continuation. I will mention the site improvement permit plans were submitted to the city on July 23rd, and they are under review. The property owner, Ernesto Flores, and Randall Long from Loomis are present representing the applicants. Thank you.
Questions of Hope? Anybody?
Just clarification.
Clarifications in order.
So I just want to make sure, Hope, so you're indicating that they've actually submitted for review to actually begin working on the property?
That is correct. The site improvement plans are construction level plans.
Okay, I just want to make sure, real work, okay.
Okay. Do we need to hear from the applicant from Roventini LLC? Probably not. It's okay. Sit down, Randall. We'll see where we are. Anybody got any questions of them? I think we're okay. We see these things now and then. Any other public comment? I don't see any, so we'll take a motion. Supervisor Abel.
Bill number?
113.
113, all right. I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 113, an ordinance approving an amendment to the development agreement between Carson City and Roventini LLC to extend the tentative plan unit development map expiration date to September 6, 2019 for the development known as Clearview Ridge, located west of Cochise Street, between West Roventini Street and West Overland Street, assessors parcel numbers 09-263, 06, 07, 08, and 09, and matters properly related thereto.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Did we get a bill number on that?
113.
Thank you.
Okay. Got the finance wizard coming up. All right. We're on, let's see. Which one we're going to do? Hope you're going to do the next one, the order of abandonment? All right. Let's take up item 16, Bravo.
She's in a hurry.
You're all done. You can go home now, Sherry. That's all right. Good job. All right. This is for possible action to adopt an order of abandonment for up to a 20-foot wide public ingress egress easement from Ash Canyon Road to Wellington South, then on north on Wellington West, turning west and ending on the southwest corner of Lot 12 of Wellington Crescent subdivision. I know we've all been through the issue of access to Ash Canyon. This is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie, but all this does is just legally confirm what everybody's agreed to. Once we built the other access, we would extinguish the one we had.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Hope has a presentation she can walk you through on it. There are actually two existing easements,
Right.
one of which needs to be abandoned.
Mayor, just briefly, Hope Sullivan, Planning Manager. The subject easement was recorded on August 26, 1992. It creates a non-exclusive easement to allow the public a means of ingress and egress to Ash Canyon. The easement document starts on page 231 of your packet. Per the terms of the easement was to be rescinded and revoked when an additional means of ingress and egress was dedicated to provide the public access to Ash Canyon. That alternative access was secured, and the document was recorded under document 304501 on August 26, 2003, and that starts on page 235 of your packet. I want to mention this because the alternative access, not the access contemplated for abandonment, involved a payment of approximately $42,000. So I understand there was a question from the commission about that payment. I want to be very clear, that payment was not associated with the easement being contemplated for abandonment. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at its meeting of August 16, 2018, and voted 6-0 with one abstention to recommend approval based on the ability to make the required findings. I am suggesting some minor modifications to the order of abandonment. On page 202 of your packet, first full paragraph, to remove the words that say, "subject to the conditions of approval included in Exhibit C." Exhibit C was included in the case of the Proctor Street abandonment because you might recall there was the public parking requirement that was going to live beyond your action. And so we needed to include that in the document as a public disclosure so that all future owners would understand that obligation. There are no conditions that have an obligation that will exist after recordation, so there's no need for an Exhibit C in this case. Also, the utility statements attached to the order are not identified as Exhibit B, so those will be identified as Exhibit B prior to signature and recordation. So those are the two minor modifications. I apologize for the error on Attachment C. And if you have any questions, I can answer those, or Stephanie Hicks, the real property manager for the city, is the applicant.
My question is, who does the property revert to?
Thank you. For the record, Stephanie Hicks, real property manager. It is an easement only, and so the ownership of the property remains the same, and that is on lot 12, and then also along the whole roadway. All of the parcels that are listed in the order are, they have an existing private access easement over this area, but ownership is still within the parcels. They are just easements.
Any other questions of Hope or Stephanie? Public comment, anybody? I don't see any motions in order. Supervisor Bankowski.
I move to approve an order of abandonment of up to a 20-foot wide public egress easement from Ash Canyon Road to Wellington South, then north on Wellington West, turning west and ending at the southwest corner of Lot 12 of the Wellington Crescent subdivision, incorporating the two changes to the abandonment that were noted in the record today.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, let's now take up item 16. Charlie, this is a possible amendment to the Planning Commission bylaws to change the month of election of Planning Commission officers, chair and vice chair, from July to January to coincide with the terms of commissioners' terms. So, is that it?
That's it. The Planning Commission did review this request at its meeting of July 25th and recommended 7-0 to recommend approval.
Any unintended consequences?
No, it just will cause the election to sync up with the appointment schedule.
All right. Board members? Hearing none. Public comment? Okay, motion's in order. Supervisor Bagwell, go.
I move to approve an amendment to the Planning Commission bylaws to change the month of election of the Planning Commission officers from July to January to coincide with the start of the commissioners' terms.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Let's take up last one under 16D, Delta. This is the sign ordinance on second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. The proposed amendment addresses flags, A-frame signs, banners, and inflatable devices. Page 261 of your packet includes a summary of the proposed ordinance as introduced by the board. This is a second reading. There was a question by the board members regarding sign maintenance. I do want to point out that section 4.4.16 of our development standards addresses sign maintenance, and it's very short, so I'll read it. All signs shall be maintained by the responsible party in good order and repair at all times, and shall be kept free of peeling paint, faded materials, major cracks, tears, or dangling materials. All canister-type signs missing a sign panel insert shall be placed with a blank insert within 30 days of notification. So we're already covered on sign maintenance. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hope, you and I emailed back and forth, and so I'd like to, you had some verbiage with regards to perhaps a Section 6 on this. My concern is that the way this document currently reads, that it allows banners to replace permanent signage. And that, I don't believe, was ever the intent, and so I see that, and in my conversations with Hope, she agreed with that assessment, so I think we need to address that.
Mr. Mayor, the concern by the supervisor was that, as written, given that there's not a time frame associated with banners, banners could de facto be permanent signs. The further concern was that businesses would utilize banners as permanent signage in lieu of what would be the permanent business sign. So the concept, and I understand from the district attorney's office this will require a third reading, is to add a Section 6 that would say, I guess, go ahead.
So not necessarily. So I did take a look at the ordinance requirements per the city charter and also NRS. There's no restriction in either in statutory law or in the city charter that requires this to go to a third reading just based on an additional modification, on today's second hearing. I leave that as a policy decision to the board, however. If you do believe as a collective body that this is going to be a substantial change to the effect where it would be more appropriate to provide a second vetting opportunity for members of the public, you're certainly free to do that. However, you're not constrained by NRS and the city charter to required to go to third reading.
Thank you.
Hope, could you read for the record what the proposed addition is?
And the proposed addition would state that a banner that is utilized as the primary business sign may only be utilized for a period of 60 days.
I think John, somebody's got the John, and then Lori.
Just one thing, sounds substantive to me.
I was going to say, I don't think it's substantive. I think we're just clarifying that an unintended consequence from last time, just to make sure the public and the businesses are truly aware. We didn't intend to let them, like you said, not have their regular business name, is what you're saying. So we're just clarifying that can't be a banner. Okay, I'm just 60 days, okay?
I have no objection to bringing this back, making this the first reading and bringing it back for a second reading.
I have no objection either to bringing it back for a second reading, just so that if there's any hardship to a business or whatever, it is vetted and they have time to respond.
All right.
May I just ask another question,
Sure,
Mr. Mayor?
go.
Well, let's say we didn't do this. Can they do it now? They can't do it now, so I'm not sure how it can have any impact to a business. I have no problem bringing it back, but I'm failed to see they can't do it now, so I'm not sure how it'd be an impact. Okay. Right. There's no impact.
But it's all right.
But I'm okay.
All right. Then unless there's an objection, Gene, you want to say anything? Come on up, because I think we're going to bring this back. We're going to modify it and bring it back, but come on up.
It's on the apron.
Okay.
Gene Munnings from Evergreen Jeans. I'm objecting to the A-frame because there's a number of things with that. When you read the way it says about because it was downtown, was for pedestrians. Downtown, you have to find a parking spot first, then you have to walk, then you walk around. Whereas the shopping centers on the north end, the south end, and the mall, they were built as for parking, and then you go into the shopping center, and then you shop where you want, but you wouldn't know what's in there a lot of times unless somebody has something out near the street. And as the last one, there was a consignment shop that you can't see on Frontier. If you want to stop in the middle of the street and read all those names up there, you block traffic. So, people do put out pennant flags or small little A-frame signs, because downtown and the rest of where the shopping center are two different, are not the same. They're apples and oranges. We're not, in the shopping centers, we don't depend on walk-in traffic. We depend on drive-in traffic, whereas downtown is walk-in traffic, because you're parking, if you can find a parking space. And then I noticed some of the places, some of the signs that I have seen around town that are questionable, that I wouldn't even consider that they should be allowed. One of them was 9 Lives Consignment Shop, which uses almost naked mannequins along Carson Street to draw people in. There's a home and garden shop on East John Street, 2 blocks off of Carson Street, that puts a sign out on Carson Street and one on William Street to direct themselves to that spot. On July 27th, there were 2 signs on Curry Street advertising a special event ahead for a private business that had a sale going on. I've never seen that before, where NDOT would put up, or a city special event, the orange sign, the special event ahead on both sides of the business. There's sandwich boards along some on Carson Street, most on Stewart Street, advertising the lunch specials for the state businesses over there in NDOT for the mall. There's a pawn shop on Carson Street.
Are you making the case for?
No, I'm making a case. These are ones that, that they have them out, but they're not falling in this new thing.
They would, because they'd have to be moved under the ordinance as it's drafted right now.
Yes.
Because it's not 20 feet.
Yes.
So which way are you arguing?
I'm arguing that these are all things that are going on currently and the current ordinance doesn't allow them, because they're not downtown. But these are things that people were putting out so that they could see. You have a pawn shop on North Carson Street that has a sign that says 20-minute parking for customers only in one of the spots that we just built with our public money in front of there, that they're making that a private parking space. I didn't know that the city deeded over part of the Carson Street to a pawn shop. And then you have a bunch of these political type signs with corrugated that have suddenly appeared all over town. So one of them says sprinkler repair call, and it's the same phone number, has junk removal call. And I mean, I don't know how that fits in any kind of signage.
I don't know, but I think where you're going is along with what Supervisor Barrett would say, get rid of them all. Get rid of them all. I mean, if that's what's happening, and we've got 2 code enforcement folks right now, I mean, and if we're going to have a third one, just police signs, might as well just get rid of every one of them. I mean, that's what the argument leads to.
But if it was, that's why I said simple on your thing, 2 words, either or. When you combine 2 and 3, if they sit back further than 20 feet from Carson Street, they should be able to put one up, a small A-frame sign. Right at 6 feet back, you have to allow for people, and then no driveways and stuff like that. And they would still have to maintain it by taking it down at night, or not having it up when they're not open. It has to be very specific, just like downtown is supposed to be.
Go ahead.
Well, I agree with you, Mayor. I think, Gene, that you're convincing me of the argument that we shouldn't include A-frame signs at all, except for in the downtown area, because I certainly don't want them out on the street where it's impeding traffic or causing a distraction. We're taking a step to allow additional signage, and I think it barely has a majority on the board here that is in favor of doing that. And if we're going to get pushback on that and already want those parameters to be expanded when we haven't even got to enforcing that or allowing that yet, it just makes me want to say no A-frame signs at all.
And can I make a comment too? The one thing that we did, if this goes forward on the third reading, with regards to drawing attention to your business, we allowed flags to be attached to your business. So that does bring attention without impeding traffic. So we're trying to draw attention and help in that circumstance where you sit back further in a shopping center, but we can't impede traffic and have these sandwich board signs out in the right-of-way.
Let me ask Gene, are there sandwich boards used at Southgate, the mall out of Southgate?
I've seen a couple out there for the restaurants, basically the foods places. They're having a special out there. They have something out there you could see them. Some of them have pennant flags, huge ones. They wouldn't be in your for square footage thing. They're much larger than that.
John, Supervisor Barrett.
Thank you. We're still in discussion. I'll wait until later to make any motion if you want.
I think, you know what, I think in terms of discussion, I think what we're going to do is move this to a third. I mean, frankly, I don't know that that's, I agree with Supervisor Bagwell that, you know, it's not necessary to do that, but out of an abundance of caution, move it to the third reading and we'll have another bite at the apple here. But,
Well, in that case, as everyone up here knows, I don't usually make motions. I will make a motion to do what Brad just said and just take the A-frames out of the equation and leave it as it was before in the A-frame case. Whether I get a second or not, I don't know. I'm probably not going to be popular with the business community in this town, but as far as I'm concerned, if I had my way, and I don't, that's why we have a group up here. I'm a minority, I'm sure, but I would have all the signs in town be the size of the marijuana distribution places. But that's unreasonable, I'm sure. I'm an unreasonable person when it comes to signs.
okay. Well, I think, you know, this is second reading, and if you want to try a motion.
You just did.
I just did, yes. I make a motion that we...
Everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? Yeah, there's a question.
Clarification.
All right.
I need a little more clarification. Are you saying A signs everywhere in the city, or?
I wouldn't have an A-frame sign anywhere in the city.
I needed clarification, because...
Since they're already in the ordinance for the, am I right about this, for the downtown, but not elsewhere? Is that correct? Yeah, it's where I'd go back to where we were in that part of this ordinance, and that would change the ordinance substantively. But I haven't heard a second yet.
Okay, well, I think, did you second it?
All or none.
He seconded it, so on the discussion, we'll take this up. You know, here's my own 2 cents on the motion, discussion on the motion. You know, we're making a step towards cleaning up the sign ordinance, and frankly, I'm okay with the way it is. It gives, you know, kind of, it's a Solomon's decision to allow some to go and some others not to, because I do think that there are benefits, just, you know, there are benefits for a sign, an A-frame that's close to the business. I can live with that, so that's where I am. I'd be voting no on it, but that's where I am, so. Go if you want.
So I agree with the mayor. I'm going to vote no because it's not consistent for all. If the motion was all A-frames everywhere, I'm going to treat all businesses the same.
So should we do that for the car dealerships?
Well, I'm just saying, I don't want to pick the winners and losers, and so I'm comfortable with adding Karen's suggestion to clarify about the banners not being their actual business permanent banner, but, so that's where I'm comfortable.
Well, in other words, I don't think anybody's heard a politician say, I'm happy to be in the minority if that turns out how it, because this is a collective decision. But I want to be clear that these A-frames, they just don't make any sense to me anywhere. But
well, that's why we have, I mean, that's democracy.
Why we have
that's how
democracy.
democracy works. I mean, you know, if we were, anyway, Supervisor Bunkowski.
I think that Supervisor Barrett, we either need to have you amend the motion to address Supervisor Abow's suggestion, or we're going to be looking at two separate motions. So I'll leave that up to you, the way you want to handle that.
Yeah, I'll just be a friendly, I'll make that motion and you could second it since you suggested it, if that's what you want to do. Sure. We'll incorporate the two into
So the
one.
motion would be to revert the language on A-frame signs back to the way it was in the original ordinance.
Right.
And to add the language, bullet point number 6, regarding banners not being used as permanent signage.
That's correct.
I would second that.
Mayor, for clarification, Supervisor Bowd, I believe, was discussing that if a banner is utilized in lieu of the business sign, it may only exist for up to 60 days, as opposed to a prohibition, so for the benefit of the record, and that if it were to be added, would be added as 4.4.7.S.6.
Okay. Public comment on the motion? I think we all know where it is. This is how sausage is made, huh, Dan? You don't want to look at it. All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, right before the motion is called for a vote, I want to take this opportunity to just provide some additional clarity. I think the motion is clear to me now, but I'm seeing that there's a little bit of a debate on the record with respect to what's, a substantive change versus what's a technical change. And I think, perhaps that was my mistake from a prior hearing months ago where I chimed in to have that discussion. I want to make very clear for the record and for the benefit of the public and as well as the board that, the legal standard as to whether or not an ordinance has to go to a subsequent reading has nothing to do with whether the change itself is technical or substantive. And really what it has to do with is whether the change itself is going to modify the ordinance to the extent that the summary of the ordinance and the title of the ordinance is going to be modified. That's for open meeting law, clear and concise standard, and also for publication standards, but doesn't really have anything to do with technicalities or substantive changes. So I just wanted to make that, clear on the record if I had misled, the supervisors in any way in a prior hearing. And as I pointed out before a few minutes ago, NRS and city charter specifically provide that ordinances at either the first or the second reading can be modified for a vote.
That's it. I appreciate that update. I mean, it's more like the legislative side where, if you're not affecting the title of the bill or the summary of the bill, then you're okay. But, all right, Brad, Supervisor Pankowski.
From my perspective, and I appreciate your clarification on the record, from my perspective, the judgment that I use in requesting something to come back for an additional reading is based on whether the parties being affected by it have had an opportunity to hear it and respond to it. And in this case, they haven't, and we're making a change that may affect them and that they may have input on. And so that's the reason. I don't really care if it's substantive or not. It really just comes down to, is it going to affect people and are they going to have input on it? And the answer is yes, then I'm always in favor of bringing it back. There's no downside to it, generally speaking, unless we're under a timing deadline.
Thank you for that, Brad. I agree. The truth of the matter is, as an old newsman, I just want to give the public a chance. And a signage ordinance affects the entire public of the community. But you're right. I know your legal references are correct. Thank you.
For what it's worth, my 2 cents is that I think that's a very sound policy decision that the board is making. It's just that you're not legally required to do that. You can certainly go above and beyond what law requires. So.
I just want to comment. On the A-frame signs, I would prefer not to see them at all. However, I do understand that next to a building, it does help a business advertise, whether it be their lunch specials, a sale that they have going on, something of that nature. They may not all have an opportunity to have a banner that states that fact. So I like to at least allow options, but they do need to be near the building, as stated. Just my thought.
All right, further discussion on the motion? You ready? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay, okay.
So now we need a different motion.
For the record, that motion failed 3-2. Did you get that, Kat? I mean, just for the record, I mean, not, okay. All right.
Okay, so I'll make a motion. I move to bring this ordinance back for a vote to incorporate the discussion said here today with regards to banners and not replacing permanent signage, and the 60-day time limit with regards to that.
I'll second that motion. Doesn't mean I'll vote for the ordinance in the final version, but I'll second the motion because that's just proper procedure.
Okay.
Brad.
Yeah, this is one of those cases where I'm going to use the Amade system of voting, and if 95% of the bill meets my approval, I'm going to go ahead and I'll vote for it.
Yeah. Okay.
I knew we had him come here this morning for a
We exercise his comment often.
All right, this is going to be coming back. There's a motion and there's a second on the motion. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. So this will be back, third reading. Thanks, Gene. Thanks. All right.
Mayor, I'd like to
What did I do
request-
now?
On the next item, I'd like to request that we could move item 18A up for the interviews. We have several applicants that need to get to their work, so.
Let me ask the board this before we move it up. Everybody, do we need to discuss, how big is the discussion on 17? This is what the audit committee requested?
Right.
I don't have any questions.
Anybody? All right, then we'll take up item 17 alpha. This is to direct the city's retained internal auditor, Ide Bailey, to proceed with certain audit. Nancy, it's going to get out of the way here real quick, so. Certain projects, audit projects for year 2019, consistent with the discussion of the audit committee's last meeting, including a risk assessment evaluation, a fire overtime study, a temporary staffing study, cybersecurity, and a follow-up on prior year internal audit findings, and the fraud, waste, and abuse program coordination. Is there anything else? I think we know what's going on. You don't have to come up, Sherry. I think we all know what's going on. This is an adoption of the, and I don't mean to hurry it up, but disclosure.
Okay.
Disclosure's in order.
Pursuant to NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. My son works for Ide Bailey. I previously abstained from voting on the award of the contract to Ide Bailey because I believed that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my position could be materially affected by my relationship with my son, who, although he does not have any direct involvement in these Carson City audits, could in general be impacted as an employee by awarding contracts to his firm. Here, however, the contract has already been awarded, and the item before us now only involves giving direction to the internal auditor by the board as a whole for the purposes of proceeding with certain audit projects recommended by the audit committee. Because the giving of procedural directions is a routine function and does not materially affect the independence of my judgment based on my relationship with my son, and also because NRS 281A.420 requires abstention only in clear cases, I do not have a qualifying conflict and will be voting on this matter.
Okay. Public comment on this issue? Anybody? It's somewhat routine. The audit committee has done the due diligence on it, and I think we all understand what the internal auditor is going to be doing. So, any other questions of the board? Motion's in order. Supervisor Bankowski.
I move to direct Ide Bailey LLP to proceed with internal audit projects for fiscal year 2019, including a risk assessment evaluation, fire overtime study, temporary staffing study, cybersecurity, follow-up on prior year internal audit findings, and fraud, waste, and abuse program coordination.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing and seeing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. All right, now we'll take up item 18. You want to introduce this one, Nancy?
Yeah, so this is to appoint 3 members to the advisory board to manage wildlife, to represent the sportsman, rancher, or farmer positions, each for a 3-year term that will expire in July 2021. And I believe Rachel has the order of the applicants.
Who were the 2 that are not going to be here? Adam and Tyler?
Correct.
Adam and Tyler are not here. Okay. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Mayor.
How are we doing this morning?
I'm good. Members of the board, I'm Rob Beamer. I'm a current member of the Wildlife Advisory Board.
So why don't you tell us why you want to stay on the Wildlife Advisory Board and why you're at it?
Because you guys want me to stay on that board.
Tell us what you're doing about deer.
No, I serve currently as a hunter education instructor and angler education instructor and bow hunter education instructor. And I also was responsible for creating the Advanced Hunter Education Program for the state of Nevada, which introduces back the Learn to Shoot portion that probably some of you may have remembered when you were young, and where we used to go out to the gun clubs and stuff and actually introduce that to the youth and individuals that were taking hunter education within our community, and so we came up with a new program to be able to introduce that. We utilize both our ranges here in town as managed ranges, and then I also serve as the president and chairman of the Nevada Operation Game Thief program for the state of Nevada as well, which our board, our actual citizens board, that issues all the rewards for people that give information to lead the conviction of wildlife violators. I serve on that board, and then I also serve on the advisory board, and then was instrumental as Supervisor Abad is well aware, as well as you are, I'm sure, all aware. We created the Urban Wildlife Subcommittee that we are dealing with all of our wonderful deer that we have in our beautiful city, and all the other wildlife issues that we have, and just bringing public awareness to how to handle those situations when you're faced with them. We have done some awesome outreach, I think, on the west side of town especially, and even down into areas like Northridge and areas by the Sheriff's Department, and where the deer are actually utilizing that habitat as kind of their home, and actually having babies. And we put a campaign out where we gave flyers to members of the community during fawning season to help people understand the dangers of going up and allowing your kids to try and take pictures with deer, and we did actually witness that happen while we were doing the flyers, and it was a great teaching moment. And so we've been able to do that, as well as have some public service announcements that we've created. I think Supervisor Abad was part of that, I think, if I remember right, and that went out to members of the community to help them understand how to deal with our urban wildlife. We're kind of unique here in Carson City in that we have so many different types of wildlife that we have to deal with, and there's hardly any other. There's probably not any other city in the state that has the mule deer population that we have, along with dealing with coyotes and stuff. And I do myself, along with some members that are leaders of Boy Scouts, we go out to Riverview and do awareness. We do bird watching and do the bird watching merit badge, or the bird study merit badge, and then we also invite members of the community to come out there and kind of teach them how to interface with our coyote population that we have out there that have been a problem at times. And so I think I have my hand in a little bit of, I think, quite a valuable asset, I guess, if you will, to the community, and I'm willing to, well, I should say my wife is willing to allow me to continue down that path if it's the board's pleasure to allow me to do that. I do work for the state of Nevada. I run the deferred compensation program for the state and for Carson City as well, and so I do have a real job that takes up a lot of my time.
That's a real job. You probably get you know how to deal with a lot of different people on that one.
For sure.
Yeah, Rob, I got it. All right. Who wants to start? We can start. Okay, Supervisor.
Hi, Rob. Well, you've been great in this capacity, and I thank you for that. And What is your thought process on the management of wild horses? And what do you think the Nevada Division of Wildlife could do better on this?
Well, I appreciate you bringing that.
We don't have enough time for that.
I'll give you the short answer. And I will say that I think that's on everybody's mind, right, including myself. I will say this, that I don't think this is a Department of Wildlife issue. I really think that we need to get all of our special interest groups that are for and against as well to come to the table and realize that if we don't have a management program in place, which we don't currently, as you all know, right? I can go on forever on statistics that are hard statistics that we know of right now with regard to the horse management, wild horse management in our own community, in our backyard, right? Where we're over 300% of capacity of what the carrying capacity that this habitat can even handle. We've seen where other wildlife populations are now being affected adversely because of that. And unless something happens on a federal level to where we can come to consensus with regard to how to manage, putting a management plan in place, we're just going to see this continue to spin out of control. And really what's going to happen is we're going to see what I think everybody doesn't want to see, and we're to that point now where we are already seeing where herds are getting so large and so territorial that they're now killing offspring, mothers that are getting ready to birth. That's happening right now in our own backyard as we speak. So to answer your question, I really think that this has to be a collaborative effort where everybody comes to the table here from a legislative standpoint and from a federal regulation standpoint, and that we come up with some sort of a plan to at least start a management plan, right? All of our other wildlife have a management plan, and I know nobody wants to introduce hunting, which has been proven to be a viable wildlife management tool, right? I know that there's not an appetite for that, and I understand that, but there has to be some consensus as far as getting everybody to the table and realizing the problem with not having a plan at all. So does that answer your question?
Thank you, that's a good answer, thank you.
Okay. Did I do good, Brad? I know you're looking at me like, oh, let's see what you have with this one.
Well, no, I just thought, I was thinking about your comment about hunting, and there would be quite an appetite for Europeans to come over here, but I don't ever see that happening. I mean, that would be a real political football. My question for you, Rob, is herd management through tag allocation. Herd management through tag allocation.
Gotcha.
Do you favor quality or quantity, and why?
That's kind of a tough question. Let me give you, I know, yeah, that's kind of a tough question because there's two components to that, right? Certainly, I kind of look at things from a conservative standpoint, right, and from a conservationist standpoint, if I will, right. The quality, I know that the quality of animals that we have here in the state of Nevada, I don't foresee that going away because the state does such a great job at managing, and their management plans are top notch, right. We have in the state of Nevada wildlife that would be considered in the sportsman world as being trophy wildlife. Okay, that's not why I hunt, right? I hunt for the harvest, if you will, right? I hunt to be a contributor to wildlife management. Right. If I so happen to get a nice animal, which I have, for the record, it has happened, then I guess even more cool, right? I mean, it's great to be able to have the opportunity to harvest some of the wild game that we have here in the state of Nevada and be able to bring that home and partake of that with friends and family, right? And we're seeing, and with this year, we saw an influx of 39% increase in the amount of people that that applied for cow elk tags in the state of Nevada, mainly, and they're attributing that mainly to the fact that everybody is now on board with how healthy big game meat is versus the alternative going to the grocery store and buying it, right, or buying it from local farmers and stuff. So, to answer your question, from a conservation standpoint, the quality does not really interest me as much. The quantity, again, is not really. I don't have any interest in that as well. I mean, I think that we need to rely on our biologists that do this full time and all the studies and data that they bring back to determine whether or not tag quotas need to be increased, decreased in an area or in a unit based on a lot of things: carrying capacity of the habitat, what the species or whatever they're considering increasing or decreasing, what that species is doing as far as thriving in that habitat, and then also competition in that habitat, which we have a big issue right now, like we mentioned earlier, with wild horses knocking other game species off of that habitat, right? And causing, I truly believe that's causing us to have the urban wildlife populations that we do have, right? They're going to go where they get the food the easiest, and if they're born in that environment, they're going to continue to use it. So, answer your question, I really can't take a side one way or the other. There are certain aspects I love about a quality hunt, and there's certain aspects I love about a quantity, if you will, or increase in quantity or decrease in quantity, and there's certain things I don't like about it. So I don't know if that's good enough for you, or it's hard for me to take a position on that because I am a conservative when it comes to, and a conservationist when it comes to making sure I always put the animal first, man, and I feel like we are the ones who need to interface with them, not them interface with us. So, okay.
Lori.
Good morning.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. So the NRS states that the duty of potentially your duty, the board shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and setting seasons for the fishing, hunting, and trapping. So can you tell me what criteria you use to make recommendations on setting of the seasons?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. We're very fortunate because when we do have seasons or quota, when we get we're going to set those parameters, if you will. We get all of the data from the biologists that have actually performed all the studies throughout the year and have collected harvest data as well as birthing data, what the habitat has done, if we've had fires in the area that's going to affect wildlife species, all that. We have the opportunity to review that. And I think for the most part, all the members of the board really take that as an advantage to look at that. I also reach out to the biologists in that area that's kind of assigned to that area, and we talk to them a lot about it as well, and even invite them to our meetings to give us information on that before we make that decision, right? And before we make the decision to either support what's being presented or to modify. And there have been times when we have not supported the commission and their recommendation, especially when it comes to the CR front and to areas that are within our community. We have 3 different hunting areas in our community, if you will, right? And so Carson City's kind of particular versus all the other counties in the state. We have a lot of other things, kind of urban interface items that we have to consider when setting those, and then we have sportsmen's groups here that we like to hear from as well. So we take all that into consideration before we make that decision. I will say that I know I do that, and it's been my experience that the other board members that currently serve do that as well.
And I just follow up before John. What are the 3 areas, the 3 hunting areas?
So we have 194 and 196 We have 231, which is classified as 194, 196 is classified as there's just 2 units, but it's really considered a single area. And it actually extends from Spooner Summit. It would be everything west of 395 from Spooner Summit all the way to Cabela's. So that whole entire range, which, we share that with Washoe County, as you know, that whole entire range is one unit, one area, if you will. The Pine Nut Range, which is what we have the majority of that range, and then also 195, which is right up here on McClellan above the Lehman's Cinder Lights Pit, and all that area is classified as honey, or 185 hunting area. Very limited quotas in our areas, which is, I think, good. I think they manage that well. I happen to be a proud recipient of a 194, 196 mule deer tag up here, for the record, and I've been putting in for that tag as my first choice since I was 12 years old, Bob. And I finally pulled that booger, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, I can see, that's good. And Brad, do you ever have one of those tags?
Never got one.
All right, John.
Persistence.
Thanks for letting me jump in there. Thank you, John.
Not a problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I live with wildlife. I have a 3-year-old almost Rhodesian Ridgeback, and that's as close as wild as you can get that lives in your home in some ways. She's also quite docile in other ways, but I'm not concerned about her if she had to take on one coyote, but we all know how coyotes operate. They will try to lure your dog off into the wilderness, and then a pack of them will come down. What is your recommended way of dealing with this problem of coyotes? Because we do have what you say is a unique urban-rural interface.
Yeah, so I think
and a lot of coyotes.
We do have a lot of coyotes right in my backyard, and Lori will attest to that, right? This is my take on that. There's 3 different components, I think, if you will, that I think we should be considering. Okay, I think we've made it quite clear. The city has made it quite clear that we do not want discharge of firearms that are unregulated within the city, just from the safety standpoint, right? And I know we have kind of fallen in line with our neighboring counties on that. I think that's a great thing. But when we have areas, especially in some of our parks, like I'm thinking about the Riverview Park is probably the biggest area where we have a lot of problems, to consider, the city, and I think they do a great job of it. I think Parks and open space management do a great job at this, but they do need to know when it's time to pull the plug, right? If they're getting multiple reports of coyotes harassing their personal animals or even themselves. I had a gal who was freaked out, crying and hysterical when we were out on the trail because coyotes came up to her, and she claimed that they came up and actually nipped at her ankles, and that's a problem, right? Regardless of whether it was legit or not, I think that is something that the city needs to step up, and when you get reports like that, we need to be aggressive in handling that. That's number one. And there's different ways that we've done that in the past, and I think we should continue to utilize like USGS, where they come out and do regulated abatement, or they actually will observe the coyote population in an area, and they will harvest whatever the troubled ones are, and do it legitimately, right? And we don't have any regulation on coyotes in the state of Nevada. I hope you guys know that. You don't even have to have a hunting license to shoot coyotes. Where the problem lies is if you're harvesting and discharging those firearms within city limits or county limits that don't allow for that. And each county and city has their own regulations, right? And so to allow for groups, especially sportsmen's groups, to come in and close a park area off or something like that, and allow them to have a regulated harvest that would be a day type thing to be able to abate some coyotes. We have seen that. I can tell you right now, I've got some experience in that. We go for John Esquaga on his ranch and the Snyder Ranch over off of Jacks Valley Road. They were losing 21% of their lamb harvest every single year. That for a farmer, and I think it could be argued that, they probably aren't, that's not their main source of income, right? But for a farmer to lose that kind of livestock, that's devastating, right? And John shared with me that at one time it was up to 30%. So we started going out there and we put a plan together to do some abatement, and it was just certain times of the year to do that. It was regulated. We told all the neighbors about it, all that stuff, and it was very successful to the tune where their lambing, they were almost 100%. I think they maybe only lost 1 or 2 lambs in the 5 to 10 year period that we performed this, and it was regulated. It was something that was set in, people knew about. We made the public aware of it. Do we get a little bit of pushback from some of those that don't want to see any animal killed? I get we did, but it is what it is. It's we have to accept the fact that we live where we live, right? And so I think that's the second thing. The third thing is public awareness, and I think the city did a great job in helping, allowing us to develop this urban wildlife committee. I wish that there was more efforts and more attention kind of drawn to that, to where we could do a little bit more education, public awareness and education. We just don't have the funds to do that. We're relying on donations from businesses and individuals to be able to make that happen. Yours truly, right? And guys like Doug Martin and other members of the community that have played a part in that. And there has been some real good residents, especially on the west side, that have said, listen, we'll back you 100%. You just tell us what you need done and we'll make it happen. And we have utilized that. But to really get a little bit more public awareness, we would, this is becoming a citywide issue, this mule deer issue, and we all love to see them. I don't think there's any of us that would say that we don't love to see them, but there has to be some awareness. We're going to come to the point, what I'm afraid is we're going to come to the point where someone's going to get injured, or we're going to have property damage, which we have already seen, right? That's going to be more extensive than what we've already seen, and then that's going to come back to you folks, unfortunately, and you're going to have to deal with that. And so the mere fact that we've developed a committee to do that is great. I just hope that the supervisors and the city will kind of back that a little bit more and help us to get this awareness out for everybody. Does that answer your question?
You bet. Thank you for your full answers.
Anything else, board? Rob, anything you want to add? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I've learned a lot this morning.
Have you?
No, and it's been very informative. You raise a lot of, you raise a lot of issues, and you have some suggested answers and things like that. It's a good job. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and I know that I'm speaking on behalf of all the current members of the board, that we are one of the most active boards, county advisory boards in the state. So, and rightfully so. We're the capital city, and we should be, right? And so, I think we represent our city well, and I'm willing to continue down that path, but certainly if this board has a appetite to have some new blood in there and some new ideas, I certainly would support that as well. So,
thank you, Rob.
All right.
All right. Thanks for your service on that.
Appreciate you
how it
guys.
comes out. Thanks.
All right.
Are you going back to work now?
We have budget meetings, and
Oh.
Mike Wilden, that was him calling on the phone. So the governor is trying to get everything wrapped up, and so.
Tell Wilden that goofy mayor over there went on so long, so.
I will.
You just
share
blame it on me, okay?
That's
right. All right.
Take care. Good seeing you, Dan.
Hey, Gil. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Mayor, staff.
Haven't seen you for a while.
Well, the hospital's been keeping me a little busy. For the record, my name is Gil Yannick.
So Gil, you've been on there for a while. Why do you want to stay on there?
I enjoy what I'm doing. I think I do a good job at it. Not only do I support Carson City with being on the Wildlife Advisory Board here, but I'm chairman of the Finance Committee for the State Wildlife Commission. And I've been doing that for the last, almost over 8 years now. I guess they like what I do. My biggest responsibility is to create the budget for the 17 different county advisory boards. And when I first came on the board at Carson City, they said, "Oh, you're going to be the treasurer secretary." Okay, what do I do? Your job is to create the budget. Oh, and so I said, "Can I look at some old budgets?" They couldn't find the paper bags that they were written on, so we had to kind of start from scratch. And I kept asking myself, why are we doing this thing? Somebody's sitting down writing all this. This is modern age, like? Why don't we make a spreadsheet, and it'll be not only legible, but understandable where all the numbers came from. So I put together a spreadsheet based on where the meetings were going to be held, the mileage, the rate per mile, incidentals, lodging, food, and anything that they had to purchase to support them while they were on the road. And I didn't think it was anything great, but when I went to the next commission meeting and I started talking to people about what we had done, they all looked at it and says, "Send me a copy. Can you email me?" So one thing led to another, and then they asked me to put on a work session to teach all the other advisory boards how to use this, to take advantage of it. So it was kind of like, I didn't expect to be doing all that, but it kind of, one thing led to another, and I guess like everything else, if you're good at it, they'll let you keep doing it. So I did that, and the other thing that was in my favor was I was retired, and the meetings start on Friday and end on Saturday, a 2-day meeting with the commission. And because I was the only person that wasn't working, they said, "Gil, you can go to most of these meetings because you don't have to worry about taking Friday off." So I said, okay. And they said it'll be a great way to learn about the state of Nevada. And I made a list, I don't know if I brought it with me, of the number of cities that I've been to and the number of counties that I've been through. I've been to 19 different cities for the meetings and 12 different counties. So I've learned quite a bit about the state of Nevada by being on this board. I think I contribute quite a bit to the board based on the experience that I've picked up or had to learn along the way. One of the first things I did was, there's a process by which you can petition to change the way things are done. What I'm talking about is when you want to, let's say, hunt a party hunt. Several people, group of people want to hunt, enjoy that together. We have a procedure for that within the rules and regulations of when you apply for your tags. Well, having just recently moved from California, I had a couple of friends that I hunted with in California that I said, "You should see the game here in Nevada." So when I started looking into it, they could apply, but there was no guarantee that they would be drawn for the same hunt that I was drawn for. So I said, gee, that kind of puts a damper on those kind of things because the chances are between slim and none. So I talked to some people on the Wildlife Commission. I said, how do I get something like this changed? He said, you start a petition. Oh, okay, how do you do that? So, you read the NRS and it tells you about the petition process and what you got to do. And finally, I made friends with a couple of the commissioners who kind of, led me by the hand and took me to go to this process. First, you got to fill this out. First, you got to that. Then you got to get it approved by the majority of the counties. Okay, so you kind of learn and you get to know an awful lot of people in a short period of time, because I was really pushing for this, and it eventually got approved by the Wildlife Commission. It became part of the NRS regarding hunting and party hunts, and people say, how did we ever get along without this? Because it does bring an awful lot of additional income into the state because of friends that you have in other areas that you've hunted with, and it made life easy for everybody. The things that we do here in Carson City, I've been instrumental when we had that issue with passage of the bear ordinance, holding a number of meetings in various places in town to let the public know, why is this important? Why do we need this? Why do we have to educate the public about the fact that, yes, we have bears? I mean, it's one thing to have a lot of deer, but when you got a big bear, in your garage or attempting to walk away with your garbage can, it becomes a totally different issue. So those are, some of the things that I've been involved with. My wife and we have a nonprofit that we formed, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years ago, called Friends of Nevada Wildlife. And the biggest thing that we do is we sponsor a luncheon at the legislature every other year when they meet. We send out invitations to the legislators and their staff to come listen and talk to various sportsmen and hunting groups and conservation groups, and let them explain to the legislators what's important about wildlife this year, what things are an issue in the state of Nevada as it affects wildlife. So that's become an every other year thing that keeps me busy. And
sometimes those guys in Las Vegas, they need to know that there's wildlife other than desert turtles.
I wish you good luck with that, Mayor.
I know.
The issue, that we've had a number of very sensitive issues, both, affecting wildlife, affecting hunting, affecting access. Fire has been a real difficult thing to deal with because it's so hard to control, and what it devastates, especially things like the sage grouse. I was on the governor's sage grouse conservation team for 7 years, and it was always a problem with finding, what do you do to rehab the area that gets burned? And 1 year the money was tight, or we couldn't get enough seed, or it didn't rain after we planted the seed, and it's just been, it's one issue after another confronting wildlife. I mean, I think our advisory board has done a really good job of acquainting the public with the do's and don'ts with regards to the large deer population that we have here in the community. I think most residents who travel down Nevada Street and the ones that parallel that, they stop for the deer, let them cross at their leisure, and then go on about their travels. It's a matter of trying to educate the people about, don't feed the deer, please. They're nice, they're cute, and a lot of times when they walk out in their front yard under a bush, they see a new little fawn. Oh, he's so cute. Well, be careful, because the mom's not too far away, and she may not think you're being too cute to her fawn. So, we have those things to deal with. We have some pressure from, people who bow hunt on the west side of town. We've had issues with that, but working with game wardens to alert them when somebody reports something like that happen. They're very good about it. And there's a close relationship between the members of the advisory board and local sporting groups. I mean, we all kind of have our favorite things that we like to do and the groups that we like to spend time with. And it's nice that we pick up a flavor of what everybody's thinking about. And then we also formed a tri-party meeting with the Wildlife Advisory Board in Reno and down in Gardnerville. So a representative from Carson and a representative from each of the other communities gets together prior to the commission meeting to see if there's any issues that affect all of us. And therefore, we can get up and talk about it at the commission meeting and present a united front about, yes, we're in favor of this, no, you're going to close this area off, or the BLM doesn't let us get up here, and especially when we had some problems getting up to Hobart because of the mudslides that had been. We had a lot of comments from a lot of the fishermen in both communities. And when are you going to get the road fixed? Well, it's up, it's operating, people are fishing up there on a daily basis, and we're all very happy with the effort that the city put forth to make that possible to get back up there.
Okay. Karen, go. Joan.
Hi, Gil.
Hello.
What is your thought process on the management of wild horses, and what do you think the Nevada Division of Wildlife could do better on this issue?
Well, as long as this has been an issue and it's been discussed since the very first time I went to a commission meeting, it was a big problem when I was on the Governor's sage-grouse conservation team because wild horses were doing a lot of damage to the leks that the grouse habitated. And there's a level that was determined to be acceptable to the BLM as to the number of horses on any particular range. Well, that level was never maintained by BLM. Either they didn't have the money, they didn't have the time, it just wasn't high on their list of priorities. And it got to the point where the Wildlife Commission threatened to sue BLM for not enforcing the level that was supposed to be maintained. And their excuse was, we just don't have the money. We just can't do it. Well, can't do it, where are you spending all your money? Why can't you take some money from other activities and divert it? Because you're killing a resource that's, we know, is in very short supply to start with. And we were not totally successful. We've never been totally successful in reaching the AML that was predicated by the experts as to how many horses can this range support with the water and with the feed. Whether we're ever going to get there, I don't know. I mean, you get to it's a sensitive situation to discuss with anybody, because what do you mean you're going to remove them from the range? Where are you going to remove them to? Oh, we have a big farm there, and there are hundreds of thousands of horses that the government is maintaining. And it's like $250 million a year is being spent to maintain those horses, provide care, food for them. Well, I never had a horse. Yes, I've ridden a horse. I've hunted on a horse. But the idea of somebody telling me, well, we're going to round up all these horses and 50% of them are going to go slaughter and we're going to ship them overseas where people eat them. when you're out in the wild and you come across a herd of horses, it's beautiful. I mean, it's magnificent. But at the same time, I was hunting once in Cherry Valley, and there was a water hole. These horses would not let any other critter near that water. It was theirs. Well, is that good? Is that bad? I mean, the horses are going to survive. Well, will the deer that were looking to feed on that survive? I don't know. In areas where we have sheep, I was out on a tour. We had a commission meeting in Dyer 2 months ago, and we took a tour to where we had a man-made guzzler. And it's a magnificent amount of effort that goes into putting one of these guzzlers in the middle of nowhere. But they get it done, and it feeds, almost every animal that's in, a 5 to 10 mile radius. Because there's no springs, there's no rivers, there's no streams. And without that guzzler, we wouldn't have sheep in those areas. So you see that they vie for the natural resources. Horses drink a lot of water. Sheep don't drink that much water. So they're always in contention of who's going to control what we get to drink. And when you have an overabundance of horses in any particular area, the limited supply just can't feed everybody.
Yeah, we're not going to solve the wild horse one here, but Karen,
I mean, my issue is that it would be nice if the government did what they set a level of what the area can support to maintain it at that level. They're not.
Brad.
Bottom line.
Hello, Gil.
Hello.
My question is regarding herd management through tag allocations. So there's obviously a lot more hunters applying for tags than there is tags. So give me your thoughts on quality herd trophy hunting versus allowing more tags for a larger quantity of hunters, and why? Which would you favor?
Since I've been involved on the advisory board, every year we have a discussion of quota setting. How many tags are we going to issue? And most of the time, we rely on the information that NDOW provides from their survey data. And Carson City, because, we don't have any huntable game in our county. So we listen to the stories that come up from the various counties that rely very heavily on the income from the hunters that hunt in those particular counties. Because when you go to the season setting and quota setting meetings, you have counties that say, I want one more or two less. And I'm saying, in the whole scheme of things, when you have as many tags out as we say, what does one or two mean? But it's important to those particular counties because every additional hunter buys gas, stays somewhere, buys food, buys ammunition, spends money in the town. So, counties like Carson and Douglas, who really don't have herds of animals that people are in a quest for, we kind of have to rely on the recommendations of NDOW. Guided by some of our own hunting experience that we've been on, and hunters that we talk to about access to certain areas and the limitations of getting into some of these areas. Whether or not by curtailing the number of tags improves the herd, well, think about it. When you have a real dry year, or we're coming off a major fire, and food becomes very scarce, if you have a lot of game that isn't going to be fed, they're not going to be in very good condition. And we've done this just last year. There was a hunt a special hunt that was available because there was so little food in this one area that 30 or 40% of them would have died from starvation if we didn't have approve a special hunt. I mean, this way at least the meat got used by the hunter and his family rather than just coyotes or bears, feasting on the ones that just gave out. So I think that the department, in their surveys, when they look about the herd, because the income we get from out-of-state hunters who spend a lot more for tags than Nevada residents, I mean, that's substantial to a lot of these communities. So we want to maintain the quality of the herd. Now, we have agreements with farmers because when you got a big herd of elk, they can decimate a crop in no time at all. So we also have an issue with landowner tags, and that we're currently in the middle of a big discussion about how do you distribute equally and fairly to these landowners based on how much has been trampled, how many elk have they seen on their property. Very complicated process, and to a lot of the farmers and ranchers, it's a big thing, a very big thing.
All right, thank you. Roy?
Good morning, Gil.
Good morning.
Okay, so the statute indicates that the board shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and the setting of seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping. So tell me what criteria you would use to make recommendations concerning a setting of seasons.
Well, again, these recommendations are coming from Carson City Advisory Board. Our experience in Carson City, when you look at the percentage of people who are residents of Carson City who have hunting and/or fishing licenses is about 5%. Very low compared to a lot of the other counties. Mainly because there's no game here. People hunt, they go someplace else. Now, when we talk about these things at our board meeting, about how do we set these quotas, how do we set the season settings, a lot of that, we're not the experts. We look at endow biologists. They're the experts. If they're recommending, 174, we're going to have the season from here to there. Well, they've done the survey. They know what the size of the herd is like. They know what those trails can be like, up, as you get closer to the summit, what it's going to be like in the winter, depending on what the weathermen are predicting. And so we try to err on the side of being conservative, because the last thing we want is to take too many game, because the probability of being able to replenish them, depending on what the previous season was like, or what the previous season's weather was like, is undetermined. So we, to a greater degree, we depend on the recommendations of the biologist. I mean, we have some people, when we talk about, duck hunting season and things like that, yeah, we have a lot of people who duck hunt. And they come to our meetings, they're members of our board, who say, oh no, we got to get one more day because the season is set by the government and you only have so many total days that you can hunt. And so you want to allocate them, and then you want to think about the youth hunt, because there's a special couple of days set aside when only the youth can go out in the field. So it's not a complicated process, because we've been doing it for a long time. We know what the public expects, and we try to satisfy their needs and the demands of the public, and at the same time, we need to replenish the supply of not only game, but the hunters. So we need, and now kids are doing this rather than learning how to shoot or to fish and stuff like that. So we have some challenges of our own to try to inculcate within the youth the idea of hunting, and it can be fun. You bring food home, and it's enjoyable to be with your friends. So it's kind of a complicated issue, but we try to make it as simple and straightforward so that the public understands, why did we do this? Well, if you come to our meeting or you read the minutes of our meetings, when we have some of these discussions regarding season settings or quota settings, very little do we recommend, we need one more or two more. Sometimes we'll try to change the season knowing what the weather's going to be like in the area that some of the people, Carson residents, hunt in locally, so to give them a little better advantage, or we've actually had spent time with the Division of Forestry as to when they're going to close the road that allows us to get into some places. Because if they close the gate, there's just no way we can get in there. There's too much of the land is privately owned, and it's like a checkerboard when you go up in there. Unless you have permission from the landowner, you better not be in there.
Okay, all right. John?
Gil, I now live with wildlife. I have a nearly 3-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback, 85 pounds of muscle, bone, and if she needs to be, trouble for anybody. But we have a problem in the urban-rural interface in this area, and I'm sure she could take one coyote down, but I'm not sure if one lured her away to a pack that I would like it much. What can we do about this problem in Carson City?
Well, to be very honest with you, John, we've had coyote problems over by the river. And the Department of Wildlife has hired, the government hunters to go out there and reduce the coyote population extensively. We've had, where we live in Lakeview, and people I know in Timberline have issues with cats and dogs disappearing all of a sudden. Well, the only thing that we can really do, you can't discharge a firearm. You can't go out in your backyard and you see a coyote, you can't shoot it. You got a bow and arrow, different story, but I don't know how proficient a lot of people are with a bow. I know I wouldn't be able to hit the broadside of the barn with one, I think, let alone a coyote. It's a challenge for the public. The best thing that we can do is try to educate the public. And I know this is an old story, educate the public. And I have a hard enough time I constantly get calls from people that say, hey, my neighbor's feeding the deer. They come and they congregate in front of his or her porch that night before. They line up like it's food line time. Well, what the public doesn't understand, particularly in the winter, the digestive system of a deer completely changes. What he can digest efficiently also changes with the season. So if you put out there lettuce and tomatoes and bread and things like that, that deer is going to eat it. But the deer may die as a result of it, because it's going to completely upset their intestinal system. People just don't realize it. And we have a state statute that prohibits the feeding of wild game. And you tell people about it, and when people report it to me, I get hold of our local warden, I tell him who's doing what, he'll go over there, and he'll tell them, hey, you got to cut this out, if not, there's a big fine, blah, blah, blah. Most of the people follow what they say. Some of them, you just got to hand them that citation and make them pay the fee. I have a neighbor who lives across from me. He says, I'm an old man, I'm dying, and I want to see some deer. I said, you keep putting out those salt blocks and the food, you're not going to see any deer. And he argues with me. So what chance do I have? I call up the game warden, I say, here's what's happening. He goes over there and tells them, look, these better be gone by Friday, or I'm going to issue you a summons.
Yeah.
So it's all you can do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think people are feeding coyotes, though.
No, not
Intentionally
coyotes.
feeding them, yeah.
Not intentionally, not intentionally.
All right.
But
Well, Gil-
it's the same issue that we have, I know, because the department sometimes give me a call and say, Gil, can you drive around Lakeview the night before garbage pickup? See how many people are putting their stuff out the night before. So dutifully, I get in my car and I drive around Lakeview and I write down the addresses of who put something out the night before. Then I go out again at about 5:30 in the morning to these same addresses to see how many garbage cans are turned over. So, it's a matter of education. It's the only thing I can tell you. I empathize with anybody because I have dogs, and I've seen coyotes, a pack of coyotes, send out the young ones right next to my fence, and to bait my dogs into going out wanting to play with those coyotes. And then right back, 30 feet behind these two, you got the mama and the papa waiting to pick on the unsuspected.
And their friends.
And their friends, yes.
Okay. Well, Gil, I think from all of us up here, we want to thank you for your years of service on the Wildlife Advisory Board. You raise the issues that you deal with some contentious issues, and I think, from up here, you've always dealt with them in a fair, even-handed manner. So we want to thank you for your service, and we'll see where it goes today, too. So, okay?
Thank you.
Good man. Thanks, Gil. All right. All right. You're welcome to sit and listen. That's the drill if you want. Good afternoon. I was going to say afternoon, but it's morning. Sorry to keep you waiting out there a long time.
No, it's all right.
Okay. Why don't you give us your name and we'll get you started here.
My name is Miles Burdett.
Miles, you've applied to be on the Wildlife Advisory Board. We all ask the same questions of all the applicants. We just want to kind of get a feel for, why you want to serve on that board and what your ideas are about it. And so, I'm going to start off by, give you a chance to warm up here a little bit. Been standing out there listening, so why don't you take a little minute and talk about yourself and why you want to be on the Wildlife Advisory Board.
I've lived in the county my entire life. I've lived in the county my entire life, born and raised here, and as I get older, I'm preparing to pursue being an active part of wildlife management and not just a consumer. And there's some things that I see that I don't like. There's some things that I see that I think are great, and I just want to be a part of it. More than maybe coming to a meeting here or there on the subjects that are particular interest to me. I also want to learn more about the process of how it starts and how it is all managed. I know this is just county and that there's state and federal BLM and all that stuff involved. And I feel this is going to give me a small window into the whole grand picture. And I feel that I might have something to offer that others don't. Being I am a local boy, and I've seen some of the current things going on, and also had a lot of questions that I'd like to know what the actual regulations are as they're changing or as they're current.
Thank you for applying, Miles.
Thank you.
My question is, what is your thought process on the management of wild horses? And what do you think the Nevada Division of Wildlife could do better on this issue?
Well, that's always a sensitive subject for hunters, but to my knowledge, the Department of Wildlife is not the sole managing agent. That most of it comes from BLM. I feel that if the Department of Wildlife was solely in charge, that it would be led into what they do with every wildlife species, and it would end up resulting in tags to manage population numbers. I know it's really sensitive and highly controversial, I neither support it nor unsupport. I don't care either way. For me, with the wild horses, I love seeing them. I just don't like seeing how many there are as opposed to other wildlife species. I'd love to see twice as many deer, and that would make me happier, maybe half as many horses. I think that the main focus should be on the holding capacity and focusing on that. If the idea is that the holding capacity is 250 and there's 900, don't get the capacity down to, or don't remove the population to 500. And these are totally random numbers. Don't remove the population to 500 if the holding capacity is only 250. Get to 250, maintain 250 somehow. I don't know if that could be done with alternate means that have never been thought of before. I'm by no means suggesting like mass euthanization or anything else. I liked the birth control shot program. That was pretty cool. It was definitely an out-of-the-box thought that when it was implemented seemed like it worked for a while. So it should be done again, maybe. Like I said, I like seeing them. I like seeing donkeys whenever I go into other parts of the state. So they're cool. They're part of the West. I'm not saying that we don't need them. We need all of it. We need all the wildlife. Just those that are out of control need special management processes.
Good morning, Miles.
Good morning.
My question is regarding herd management through tag allocation. There's obviously a lot more hunters that want tags than tags that are given out. So give us your thoughts on whether you think the tag allocation should be kept low to maintain a quality or trophy herd, or whether more people should be given the opportunity to hunt, and why.
I'm a big supporter of holding capacity on the numbers. I don't really care about the tags. So if the population expectation is a certain number, that's what it needs to be managed for. Not a low fluctuation for a period of time and then trying to get it back to a higher number. Nevada is a gambling state, and if you apply for a tag, it is a gamble, and that's just part of the game. I apply for tags that I don't get, I apply for tags that I do get, and that's part of the game that I play. The particular units in this county are coveted and special, but part of what comes with that is a huge drawed disadvantage. If you're going to apply for Carson County, you're going to wait, and that's just part of the game. Not saying that it should be for trophy class or should be for population numbers. That I'm not particular to. It's more just the holding capacity. If there's a bad genetic strain that starts popping up, then that would be a special reason to increase tag counts, or maybe if the city grows substantially, that could affect it as well. And that's my opinion on that.
Laura.
Morning. The law says that the board shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and setting seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping. Tell me what criteria you would use to make the recommendation on setting of seasons.
That I don't really have a particular opinion about. I would like more from a personal hunting perspective, but again, it would run into, are we affecting the population in a negative value? If we are, then let's drop the seasons down. Are we dipping into nesting seasons or something like that, then we need to cut it off earlier. A recent change in the last few years of dove season extending for an extra month and the bag limit increasing was good. I didn't understand the justification because I don't see that many dove. I don't think that it was really required. A 1 month season with a lower bag limit was just fine because I've never known of hardly anybody to meet their daily limits. And so an extra month and extra numbers, I know that wasn't by the county, that's more of a federal thing, but it would just be by suggestion. Maybe I'm a big fan of limiting more specific things for more specific reasons. Our seasons and limitations of hunting within Carson County don't really correlate that well. So we can't really do a lot of waterfowl hunting in the county, so there's not really much of a suggestion to be made. The upland game that are here are few and far between, so maybe we could change from state quotas to county quotas or city municipality quotas. I don't know. I don't really have much say on that one.
Okay. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Miles, thanks for applying. I have a couple of questions. First, I noticed that someone here, Rob Beamer, is one of the people you put on as a recommendation. Did he ask you to apply, or did you apply and then ask him to?
Nope. My girlfriend tagged me in it on Facebook and said, you need to do this.
Gotcha. But my other question, the one I'm asking everybody, is, well, I first have to tell you that I live with wildlife in the sense that I have a Rhodesian Ridgeback that will be 3 in November, and she's 85 pounds of muscle, and if she ever had to, she could go wild to take care of herself. However, we live in a unique community because we have so much urban-rural interface, and I think she could take down a coyote. My concern would be in various places in this community, she could be at risk if one lured her off into a pack of coyotes. How do we handle this problem for our community? Because this is a wildlife that's sort of in a class of its own, and a wildlife that you can hunt, but you can't hunt it here.
Unless the county changes discharge ordinances, then that's not much can be done. The trapping legalities on distance are pretty much the only thing available. Centerfire rifle or discharge ordinances, the area around the river and its long distance that you can't do hardly anything firearm related, that's going to be a major limiting factor. So beyond that, it could be a county pest control agency that would do something, like if they're within, I don't know, maybe Lampas Fields, there's not much that could be done by hunters. I always encourage people who ask about, hey, what can I do? You know, I want to go archery hunt a coyote in town. Well, you follow the discharge ordinances and have at it.
Yeah, you can't hunt. One of your predecessors said that, and I correct what I said, but I don't think many of us can do that.
Yeah, so to manage it more aggressively, I think would have to require special, maybe, I don't know, out of the box thinking, a special use permit for closer range discharging or something like that, of that nature. I don't know. Maybe a housing development would allow closer discharging with a special use permit or something along those lines. Other than that, you live in the West and you're just going to deal with coyotes, so keep track of your dogs and don't let them out of your house.
Tell it to Doty.
Miles, anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate the opportunity.
What was your Eagle Scout project?
My Eagle Scout project was wood duck boxes in Mason Valley. Went to a lumber yard that's no longer around in Carson, and we got donated wood, and through my parents' church, we set up a assembly line to make them all, and then I had previously contacted Mason Valley Wildlife Management Area to ask if we could install them, and when we were done, they had some concreted steel poles for placement, and we ran up and down the river and did a whole bunch on trees and other things of that type.
Good. Well, thank you for being, thank you for applying, and also thank you for your service as a scout.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful deal for our community. You're welcome to listen, so that we have a couple more interviews. You're welcome to sit here and listen, or leave whatever you want to do, Miles. So, okay?
I appreciate it.
So, you want to take a break for a minute? Yeah. All right, we'll be in recess for 5 minutes. All right. What are you doing out there, Dan? You teaching law school? Okay. We ready? All right, ready? Hey, that's good. That's good. The coffee probably fired you up. So, if you get, for the record, just put your name on the record, and then we'll go from there. Put your name on the record. Say your name for the record.
Mark Crowder.
Right. Okay. We know you, Mark. But Mark, one, we want to thank you for applying, and you know, we're just in passing right here. You know, this wildlife board is taking on more and more visibility as the world goes forward. So why don't you start? We all ask the same questions of all the different applicants. It's the same questions, so nobody gets an upper hand. Why don't you, just to start you off, and tell us why you want to be on the wildlife board, and you know what your thoughts are on where it should go.
And my thoughts on what?
Thoughts on where it should go. I'm sorry.
Where it should go.
Yeah, if you can. You know, just get working in with, you know, why you want to be on the board. And it'll come out.
Well, first off, we moved here in 2010. I've lived in a lot of different places, fallen in love with this part of the country. Don't plan on ever moving anywhere again.
Good for you. You're okay now. That's all right.
Yeah.
You're hired.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm recently retired, January of this year. All I've ever done is work, and 60, 100 hours a week kind of thing. Haven't had the opportunity to really get myself involved in community or anything else for that matter. No real hobbies outside of this. So just recently started hunting, fishing again. I do teach at the community college, one class per semester.
And that class is?
Introduction to Engineering Design. This is a way of giving back to the community to which we've decided to stay and live.
All right. We'll get some questions here, and then we'll see where it goes. Mark, so Karen, go ahead.
Thank you for applying. My question to you is, what is your thought process on the management of wild horses, and what do you think the Nevada Division of Wildlife could do better on this?
I'm sorry, I'm really ill-prepared to answer that question. I'm sorry.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
My question has to do with herd management through tag allocation. There's obviously in Nevada many more hunters that would like to hunt than there are tags for them to hunt. So give us your thoughts on whether you think the current system is being allocated well, or if you think more tags should be allocated so more people can hunt, and why.
Well, the question about more tags so more people can hunt is really is answered by a animal population more than anything, I would think. As far as the allocation now, it seems pretty fair. To me, the people that have been putting in for a long time are the ones who end up getting the choice places, and the rest of us end up on a lottery sort of thing. I got pulled for mule and depredation cow this year, first time I've ever put in here. So it worked out well for me.
Hi, how are you
Hi.
today? Good.
Just great.
So the law indicates that the boards shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and setting seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping. So what criteria would you use to set the seasons, to make the recommendations?
That would also go back to an animal population of each one of those, whatever we plan on hunting, trapping, or fishing, I would think. As far as setting the season, is it migration patterns? Is it breeding? Is it, so I don't know how I would answer it now. I mean, all of these things that you're asking me that I don't know about, my expectation would be that we would end up studying each and every one of them before rendering some sort of a decision on them. And
Thank you. I like to say that I live with wildlife in the sense that I have a nearly 3-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback, 85 pounds of muscle and obstinacy. And if a coyote attacked her, I'm sure she could take care of herself. But coyotes are well known to lure them away with one and then to a pack. And it's a concern, not just for my dog, but for our entire community, because we have such a obvious urban-rural interface that's unlike any place else. It's unique. How can we deal with this problem? You cannot discharge a firearm in the city, and we have coyotes out near the river and in other places. What would you suggest be done?
sorry, that's near and dear to me as well. I live very close to BLM land. I've lost pets to coyotes and or bobcats. And now I have a real burly 15-pound Yorkshire Terrier who would take on your Ridgeback. Thank you very much. The 5,000-foot rule, as far as I'm aware, seems a little arbitrary in some places, especially where I am. I sit up above Arrowhead and the Sutro Terrace area, and we get the coyotes. They just migrate. They just funnel right down there. And there are some perfect places to set up and, pardon me, take care of the little bastards as they're coming down the hill. They run through our neighborhoods incessantly. I've seen them walk with impunity right up the street. I wouldn't advocate going and getting a shotgun at that point and taking care of it, but something should be done or allowable a little more close to home. I've even heard where people have been fined up to $2,500 for discharging a pellet gun within the city limits, and I think that's a little unreasonable as well. But again, another thing that would need to be studied and discussed.
Thank you.
Mark, where'd you do your time as a Special Forces Sergeant? Where were you?
I was in Bad Tölz, Germany, 10th Special Forces Group. It's 12 kilometers from Austria. Beautiful place.
Right. Anything you want to add to us? Ask anything? Want to add anything?
No. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for being a good member of our community, and thanks for applying, and we'll see where it goes. You're welcome to sit and listen if you want, or not. It's up to you. But again, we want to thank you for applying, and thank you for coming to make your home in Carson City. And we mean it. When people come here, and retire here, or what they're going to do here, as long, that's the wrong way of saying it, but, they participate in the community, that's a big deal for us. It's a big deal, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Doing all right. I like your belt buckle.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So where'd they get that buckle?
I just recently,
All
right.
Put your name on the record so that we know.
Michael Evans.
Okay. So finish your discussion there about the mule deer.
Yeah, we just started a Mule Deer Foundation here in Carson City. We had our last banquet in April. It's our first year here. I know they've had it previous years. But yeah, this is our first year doing it. We've got our next one scheduled, our next banquet scheduled for March 16th.
And the purpose of the foundation is?
Wildlife conservation. We raised a little over $10,000 last year, or in actually the last few months. So this year, that will be going to the Sierra Front here It's local projects for fire restoration.
All right. So, why do you want to be on the wildlife board?
Well, this is actually my first time finding out about it. I haven't heard about it, but I'm an avid outdoorsman. I absolutely love being outside hunting, fishing, camping. So any way to give back to the community or help in any way possible, plus to learn, from it. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever heard of it, so it's nice to be a part of it. Being part of the Mule Deer Foundation, volunteering there and opening that up, has really opened my eyes quite a bit, and I just want to keep continuing to grow with that and, see how I can help.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for applying.
Absolutely.
My question to you is, what is your thought process on the management of wild horses, and what do you think the Nevada Division of Wildlife could do better on this issue?
I believe that's a tough fight. It seems definitely like an uphill battle. I know there's been lawsuits and everything with that. It seems like they're doing pretty good, or trying to, here and there, doing the roundups. It seems like in our local area, personal opinion, we seem to be overpopulated with the wild horses that affect our wildlife as well as us individuals. Multiple accidents out in Dayton and stuff like that. I think trying to keep maybe water sources, it would be high fence possibly. Deer could still get in there. I know wild horses run off a lot of deer and other wildlife, but to me it's a tough battle, but just keep pushing forward. And I think when it might turn over and they'll see that is once the herd gets too large, to me, then it's, then they care more for the horses, not saying endow, but the people against removing them. So I know they seem to allow it more when the horses are in jeopardy of starvation or, getting too big, but I don't know, that's, kind of my take on it.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer.
Okay.
And don't worry about it. And some of it's politically sensitive, but don't worry about that either.
Okay.
So, just tell us what you think. It's not going to.
All right.
I think for all of us up here, we're more interested in, who you are and why you want to do this and what your thoughts are and go down that road. And so, Supervisor Bonkowski's next. So, and he's an avid hunter. So.
Nice, very nice.
Hey, Michael. My question has to do with herd management through tag allocations. So, as you know, getting a tag in Nevada is difficult. There's a lot of people that want to hunt here that can't seem to draw a tag. Would you advocate for keeping the current system in place, or would you advocate for allowing more tags to be issued so more people can hunt, and why?
I don't think I would go with more tags being issued. I just drew deer tag in 032. Archery tag, and they gave out 95 tags, which seems like a lot. We had a tough time finding, nice bucks. We saw one small forky the day before opener. I think, and we talked to a couple locals in that area, and it's grown by the year, it seems, a little bit here and there. Cattle, just to get off subject real quick, sorry, but I think cattle also had a big factor into why we struggled this year. But to me, you have to go with the biologist standpoint. They're out, field biologists are out there all the time conducting their studies, so they've got a pretty good idea of herd management, what's out there. It's hard to just give more tags just so people can go hunt. You can't just kill more animals. And, it brings in revenue and money, but once you go past a certain point, it's hard to bring that herd back up, I believe.
Then you could have a California herd.
Exactly, yeah. Yep, exactly. I'm an implant from there. Hate to say it, but moved from California and, yeah.
So how long have you been here?
What,
How long have you been in Carson?
I've been in Carson for 4 or 5 years, and Reno a couple years before that, but absolutely love it here.
Good, all right. I think Lori's next, and she's either a hunter or she hunts with Jim, so she does it probably herself. I mean, she's probably got, yeah, shoot, Lori, she knows what she's talking about too. That's, for me, these guys, you know, so anyway.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. So, good afternoon. We're close.
Yeah, we're getting there.
So the law indicates that the boards shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and the setting of seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping, and make the recommendations to the commission. Can you tell me what criteria you would use to help make the recommendations on the setting of seasons?
I guess I would go off of previous years a little bit. You'd have to, you know, you don't want to just completely flip-flop things on people. I don't know exactly how it works, so if you guys are in contact with Endow and everything a bit, but once again, the field biologist, I think is a huge part. I believe that they would really know numbers and everything, so if we were able to talk back and forth with people like that, as well as hunters. I know that, and fishermen, there's a lot of surveys at each lakes, angling surveys that show, you know, how many fish they caught, what day, and everything like that, as well as all the hunting surveys we fill in at the end of the year, whether it's migratory birds, upland birds, big game, how many days out scouting. So I think if we could get more people involved, such as hunters and all. Like I said, this is my first year, or first time knowing about this, so from my understanding, there's meetings that are held, and the public's welcome to come. So I would urge more public, you know, hunters to come to those meetings and give their input and how well they did, and then we can take all that into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like to say, and some people probably think I'm being facetious, that I live with wildlife. I have a nearly 3-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback dog, and I think that dog could take just about any coyote down, a single coyote, and probably take me down, but wouldn't protect me if it would be more what I'm looking for. But it's well known that coyotes will send out a single scout, shall we say, and lure animals off, and then there's a pack waiting over the hill. We live in a unique urban-rural interface area. I don't think there's anything else like it that I've ever seen. And you cannot discharge firearms, basically, in the city, and this is a city county, so that jurisdiction extends into the rural area. How do we deal with the problem? Because there's lots of coyotes around us. Down by the river, up beyond the school. I live by Sea Hill, they're up there too. What would be your ideas of attacking that problem?
Yeah, that's tough. Like you mentioned, down by the river and all, people walking dogs. We go down to the river quite a bit, and I like going out and taking pictures of wildlife and all. So we've been out quite a few times and watch a lady walk her dog, and 100, 200 yards behind, you know, you'll see a coyote start following them, and it's kind of interesting. And like you said, there's not much you can do as far as a firearm, but a bow hunting, I don't know if that's allowed. It's definitely a smaller clientele for that. Trapping, the downside to trapping is, unless, you know, if their dogs are on a leash, you're going to catch, you know, your Rhodesian Ridgeback while you're out there, and that's the downside to trapping. So that's a tough one. I really don't know other than, allowing in certain areas or time of the year, maybe a state trapper instead of just having your local, everyday guy go out there and trap, have somebody regulated for it, pest control or predator control. You're welcome.
Are you a bow hunter?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think that'd be a good solution if we had a lot of them, but I don't know you're going to cull a coyote herd.
No.
Yeah, okay. Anything you want to ask us?
I don't believe so.
Anything you want to add?
No, thanks for the opportunity. This is cool. It's definitely an experience already.
Nice job. I mean, we appreciate your interest in serving your community, and we're all very interested in what you had to say this morning. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome to hang out in here and listen to the last interview we've got, or leave if you want to do that. And then we have three slots we're going to fill today, so we'll see where that goes. But we want to again thank you on behalf of all of us up here for applying, and thanks for being a good member of our community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Sure. Hi, Daniel.
Sir, how are you?
The last in the...
Yeah, you saved the best for last.
I know, that's right, man.
I'm gonna stick with that one.
That's a good one. Best for last, Well, I tell you what, that shows your commitment to doing this, waiting.
Oh, absolutely.
Huh?
Absolutely. If I wasn't committed to it, I never would have put an application in.
Good. Put your name on the record for us, and then we'll go from there.
Either like,
Yeah, just push the button down there.
my name is Daniel Thompson.
Okay. Daniel, we asked first let me just say again that we appreciate you applying. We ask all the same questions of each of the applicants, so nobody gets a leg up. And then we have 3 positions to fill. We'll see where it goes. But as I mentioned to some of the applicants, the Wildlife Board is taking on more visibility, and you'll see some of that through some of the questions that you're going to get today.
Yeah.
So, understand that it's not just one of these boards that you go to and sit on.
Absolutely.
It's an absolute, it's the real deal in those words, so.
Absolutely.
So let me get you started off and just warm up a little bit by, telling us, talk about yourself if you want, and then tell us why you want to be on the Wildlife Board.
Absolutely, and then
Sure.
I'm already queued up.
You're already queued up.
All right, again, my name is Daniel Thompson. I've been a resident of Nevada since right around 1995 when I ended up being stationed out at the Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center. I've been working as a police officer for the city of Reno since 1998. And then I moved to Carson City in 2009. So that my wife works in Gardnerville, I work in Reno. Carson's like perfect. Currently a resident up in Timberline. And I have, from that vantage point, I have a true interaction with the wildlife in Carson City County. I'm an avid hunter, fisherman. Particularly when we talk about big game species, small game species, and try to take advantage of all the resources locally as best I can, because I truly believe you don't have to travel 200 miles to take advantage of the sport itself. The reason I want to be a participant in this board is, as the mayor just stated, this is you really have input with the state in regards to setting policy, limits, and procedures and legislation directly from the input from the community. And I think that is a huge opportunity. And even more so when I saw the advertisement for 3 positions, is that I know that one's odds are greatly improved in regards to the possibility of participation with the board itself.
Well, I live in Westwood, and yes, we do interact with wildlife.
Yeah, I'm right cul-de-sac down from you, ma'am.
That's right. My question to you is, what is your thought process on the management of wild horses, and what do you think that the Nevada Division of Wildlife could do better on this?
Well, unfortunately, the horses are federally managed, and until the feds relinquish control at the state level, there's really the biggest part of the need to advocate is more so on behalf of our native wildlife, other than the horses. The horses themselves they're being managed, but I don't think they're being managed efficiently, because for anybody that has been out big game hunting or been out hunting, period, in an area where horse herds are, you can see that the animals are struggling to survive based on the inability to sustain the size of their herds. I've been up places and seen animals that look so skeleton-like that I'm amazed that they're still moving. I think as far as the state's perspective for management of the herds, I think there needs to be a better cooperation between the federal government, and at the state level to help, I guess, get a better knowledge of what is actually going on with the interaction between the two animals. Because though everybody loves horses, you look at the extreme impact on the mule deer herds that these animals that the horses are having, because they are foraging halfway, as far as they can reach up trees. They're eating all the bitter brush. They're eating down all the natural grasses, which not only impacts the big game population, but also impacts the small game population as far as having feed for them and also shelter in the big picture. It's a very hard decision. I know because everybody loves horses, and you have a lot of advocacy with the animals, but there needs to be a more, unfortunately, almost a management to maintain sustainable herds on the range where they are living. And though the roundups are hard, a lot of these animals are adopted out, and a lot of animals are shipped out to the Midwest, to these larger portions of land. And when you go out east, the Pickett family has that huge, they bought a lot of that property up on the east side of 93, south of Wells, to where they are moving a lot of those animals, and they're feeding them. But I mean, if anybody, like I said, anybody that's been out in our wilderness areas and our rural areas, you can really see the impact of these large herds on the land itself, which is really having a significant impact to our native species.
Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, sir.
My question for you is regarding herd management through tag allocation.
Yes.
Currently, there's a lot more hunters that would like to hunt than there are tags for them to hunt with.
I hear that.
So would you advocate for keeping the system as it is, or would you advocate for opening it up and allowing more tags so more people can hunt, and why?
I'm a firm believer in the way the system is currently being operated. I do that so because this is my opinion for some facts that I have over my years of hunting. I've made relationships with game wardens and biologists within the states and in the areas that they're responsible for. The biologists specifically go out there and they're getting head counts, herd, the health of the herds, and also the concerns of the local people, and they're allocating how many animals we can actually harvest from these herds to maintain the health of the overall herd and the range. Because if you talk about specific species, that having one benefit for one species could have a counteract to the other. And so the way the system works, even though I haven't had a deer tag in 5 years, I still agree that the way the system is currently working. Because when you look at, over the years, you look at the large fires that have happened out in the northeast, north of Elko, where it's burned hundreds of thousands of acres, and what that did was that burnt out the mule deer. So the mule deer moved, and that caused a reduction in the amount of tags issued out. Yet what happened, because it burned, the elk moved in, because now you're having grass take over that area, and elk ain't nothing but a big cow. And so then they try to mitigate the elk tags, and now that area, they used to give 1,000 tags out for elk. Now you're lucky if they give 100 out, and then when they do give a deprivation tag or a tag out, your percentage rates go from anywhere from 60% down to 9%. You know, I pulled a deprivation tag outside of Ely, and success rate's 9%. And so you have to have faith and trust in what the biologists are telling us. And a long way around, I guess, to answer your question is that we stick with what we're doing.
So I have a follow-up question for you, because you brought up an interesting point, which is the variable that the biologists cannot control is the hunter success rate.
Yes.
And you see it two very different aspects on this, with the mule deer herd and the elk herd.
Yes.
Where in the last decade we've seen many more tags issued for elk, especially the cow elk, because the biologists have not figured out, or nobody's figured out, how to increase the success rate. So just issuing more tags isn't solving the problem to keep the elk herd in control. Where the deer herd is being kept in check by fires, and the horses, not so much the hunters. So, give us your thoughts on how we educate the public to get off vehicles and on their feet to get out there and actually hunt, so that the success rate changes. And you don't even have to answer that, because that's just me getting on my soapbox.
So the third gentleman, the second gentleman before me was coming out, he said he got tag up in 62, and it's like, oh, that's a tough area. I go, the animals are out there. I go, but you got to get off your quad, and you got to get out there to hunt, because the days of road hunting aren't there anymore, and that's just because of the pressure between fires, feed, water. It would have greatly reduced. So as far as the educational piece, I think it's incumbent upon NDOW, and they do a pretty good job. When you look at the application process, they got the asterisks over, they put down, hey, based on wildfires, perhaps, that low hunter success is predicted. But I think more so they need to continue, and anybody, it sounds like you're a hunter, sir. You get the emails. I signed up for the emails where they push out this information, and that is one avenue for hunter education. You're never going to get rid of that crew that all they do is drive up and down the road and drive you crazy, and when you're doing a stalk 2 miles in, they're romping across the desert in their 4x4. That's never going to go away. But it goes on the same token. I live at the foot of Westwood, at the foot of Timberline, and every opening of archery season, I see 10 hunters sitting on the cut road where it says no vehicles allowed, and there's spotting scopes in my backyard, and it's like, that's not hunting. And so it's more of an awareness, and I think as far as a position from being like on the board member, that you can communicate that to the citizens that actually come to the meetings and communicate more of a awareness. My friend tells two friends, they tell two friends, they get off your butts and hunt.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. The law indicates that the boards shall submit recommendations for the management of wildlife and setting seasons for fishing, hunting, and trapping, and then to make recommendations to the commission. So what criteria would you use to help make those recommendations on the seasons?
it goes back to the previous discussion, is that from everything I've read about the board, is that all the information is pushed down to the county boards approximately 2 to 3 weeks before the Nevada State Board actually meets. During that packet they give us all the recommendations from the biologists in regards to numbers of animals in the range, the health of the fisheries in our rivers and lakes, and also when they do the counts of, right off the bat, it's chukar within the state. So just as we discussed, is that more people are trying to get involved in hunting, but yet we cannot decimate a species or impact a species by hunter numbers to maintain a healthy flock, a healthy fishery, a healthier herd. And so when it comes to the decision making, is that really this relies on the biologists and the game wardens that are actually working in the fields doing the counts. But it is my responsibility as a member of the board is to take the recommendations or the concerns from the citizens and communicate that into more awareness. I think this year, or this is the second year of the new website they use for the applications, and I think they could provide more information on how that system works, because it crashed numerous times, and that's why I knew it was going to crash, and so that's why I put in early. But if they just make people more aware through their own media or medium, is that it'll allow us to come to a conclusion. But I think the ultimate responsibility is on the biologists and game wardens that work in specific districts in setting that quota for the hunters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a couple questions, but the first one is you said that you work in Reno as a police officer.
Yes, I'm a police sergeant.
And so you have to commute back and forth. When I first came to Carson City, I had to commute back and forth. That takes a bit of time. So do you feel you have adequate time?
Oh, absolutely. As it stands right now, I work a swing shift. I can accommodate my schedule. But I take personal time to attend the meetings. But I also know that the board meetings are held in Reno at the Valley office, which is within my area of responsibility.
Okay. That's just
no. I was prepared for that, John. But yes, no, I have.
I wasn't prepared to compute that long, but I understand.
I'm good to go.
Good. The other question that I have run before everybody else has to do, it sounds personal, but I'm not a hunter. I was a hunter from age 10 to 17, almost got blown away in a hunting accident, sort of made me mistrust my fellow hunters, so I sort of stopped. But I have a almost 3-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback, and Rhodesian Ridgeback are famous. They're hunters.
Lions.
Lions, that's correct. And so I tell people, some people think I'm facetious, but I have the dog, so I can prove it. I live with wildlife.
Right.
So in Carson City, we have a problem with coyotes, and I think my dog could take down a coyote, but you know how they operate.
Absolutely.
They send out one to lure, and then you go over the hill, and boom, there's 8 of them.
Absolutely.
Or something. And I don't think my dog, tough as she is, 85 pounds of muscle and bone, could take on 8. Right. So, and other people have much smaller animals and other kinds of animals, pets. How do we deal with this problem? Because you can't discharge a firearm in the city under most circumstances. What would you do to solve that, or can you do anything?
There actually, and I could bring up, like I said, I have the privilege of living on the edge of that state land. And what was it, 2 months ago, we had some residents of the neighborhood walking their little dogs through that trail that path runs down, and 3 coyotes attacked their 2 little dogs. You are correct that there's no discharge of firearms within city limits, but the federal government under the U.S. Fish and Game actually have a predator control program that could be tapped in regards to that, and which is not known a lot, is that they actually do under their guidance have a calling program for coyotes within the city limits. Because unfortunately, you can't set traps. Because the first thing that happens is that we get a neighborhood pet stuck in them, and we can imagine the controversy that would bring up. And you can't poison for the exact same thing. Unfortunately, because the coyote is wily, and that they have grown to adapt to all environments, that this will be an ongoing. The more we encroach on their property, the more interactions that we're going to have with them. And so I think to think through the Department of Wildlife, I think probably in conjunction with the federal government, under the U.S. Fish and Game, they have a predator calling program, is that you could come up with some sort of variance, because there are areas on the outskirts of town to where you could safely discharge firearms by calling them in and taking the animals into custody, end up calling them. I don't know, I think they're too damn smart to like live trap. And I think the whole idea of going out and during the early birthing season to get the cubs, I just don't think the community, even though they are a nuisance, would like that. But unfortunately, you are correct, it is a problem. But there's no simple solution to it. But I think, if there was a larger outcry, you could reach out to NDOW, and I think they could come up with a solution for that.
Yeah, it's difficult because we do live in an urban interface community, urban-rural interface community where the animals are there.
Yes.
And, so you're absolutely right. The answers are not easy to come by on that one. So, Daniel, anything you want to ask of us or any questions of us or anything?
No, this is an opportunity to say, that I've always watched, I try to stay informed. I didn't even know this committee existed, this board existed until I saw the application. I think by being a member of the board, I would try to get a little more notifications in the newspaper. Not everybody goes to Carson now, but through the newspaper and other media to actually have meetings. I also think that I know you have several members that are trying to get back on the board, which sort of leads to that this board actually has some significant impact. And I think it comes down to determination of you to whether or not do we want to continue with the old guard, or do you want to bring new people in to refresh the thought process of the board itself. And with that, do you have any more questions for me?
Spoken like a good police officer and a good Marine.
Hoorah.
All right. Ann Knowles, did you hear that about the newspaper?
No.
Oh.
He said do more advertising.
Do more wildlife, for the boards and commissions. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Daniel, we want to thank you for applying, and thank you for being a good member of our community. I know you work in Reno and your wife works in Gardnerville. You live here.
We're part of the community.
Yeah, gotcha. So we're going to see where we go. These are the toughest decisions we have to make. And so we'll see. So you're welcome to sit around and wait while we play Solomon or whatever we're going to do here, or you could leave, whatever you want to do. But we want to thank you again for a good interview, and thanks for participating with us here.
I appreciate it. I got to go fix my mother-in-law's computer, so I'll let you deliberate on your own. And if anybody's going to be at Ben Striefler's swearing in at 2, I'll see you there.
All right. Don't screw up on your mother-in-law's computer either. I mean.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go there.
All right.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
Thanks again. Well, board, here's a thought. To see if we can smooth this out until we maybe make a change in the policy. But we have 3 positions to fill. Suppose we just say, okay, the first 3 people can make a motion for whatever person they want. One board member gets 2, and see how that goes. In other words, if Lori wants to start, she makes a motion, and then we
go there. The next motion, in other words, we do one at a time. And that way, we don't have a panel, and we can see if each board member kind of gets to have an input on
One person at a time?
one person at a time.
Yeah.
It's okay with me.
Is that all right? I mean, I'm just trying to make it a little more easy to
Yeah.
get to.
Well, and I just want to say publicly that I kind of hanged back, if that's proper English, the last time, and I had my reasons, but I want to go on record with what I think here, because I heard from one of my most vocal constituents, and probably properly so, that I shouldn't hang back on these things, so I'm not going to do that. And so anybody wants to go first, but
You don't want to hang
I
back.
will let my
You don't want to hang back
views-
if you're going to get hung.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So anybody want to make a motion for, we've got 3 positions, so let's see. You want to go first? Anybody wants?
I'll do one. So I would like to make a motion to appoint Robert Beamer.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the motion to appoint Robert Beamer to the next term, and I think,
3 years.
how many, 3 years? So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried, okay. All right.
I move to appoint Daniel Thompson
Second.
to the advisory board to manage
All right.
wildlife for
All
a
in
3-year
favor?
term.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. All right, because you hung back, we'll go to Brad this time. You want to go? All right, John, you go. John, get in there. All right, there's a motion for Gil Yannick. Is there a second? Okay, got to make another, your turn.
Should have hung back.
Your turn.
I'll make a motion to approve Michael Evans.
All right. On the motion to appoint Michael Evans, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. I don't know if that worked out any better, folks, but I think,
Well, I actually was being serious. I want to apologize to the board. I had my reasons, but they don't matter. What matters is, it's true. I need to step up when the time comes, and I'm perfectly willing to. And I'm glad we did it that way this time.
yeah, it seems like we get a chance and
Right.
okay. And, on this one, we have lots of experience that's there and a lot of people who are, not on that board, who come with, good thoughts, articulate, personable, and, willing to engage with the public, and to put their brain power behind, how they're going to deal with those issues that are coming up, because they're getting to be controversial is the wrong word, but they're getting to be they're more plentiful, these issues are. And it's not lost on me. And I think I caught you here, but I think, the Carson City as a municipality, the only livestock we own or have control really over are dogs and cats, is that right? Because the other wildlife like deer, bear, chickens, well, we have chickens too, yeah, we have chickens, yeah. Deer,
Oh, sorry.
pigs. I don't know.
Okay, you're like, okay, shut up.
Any pigs?
Yeah.
So, but like on deer or horses, we really don't have the jurisdiction, I don't think, to deal with that.
You're absolutely correct, based on my understanding. Let's take, for example, wild horses. Carson City is a municipality. We wouldn't have any control over that, any jurisdictional control. And there is some overlap with respect to, the federal government and what the state can control. But for the most part, it's really left up to the federal government in many respects. Same thing with other wildlife. So, yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. We don't really have a lot of jurisdictional authority, which is one of the reasons why this board that's created by statute for each county is an advisory board only, and for purposes of recommending approval or non-approval of regulations that are proposed by the state agencies.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I think it was very interesting to see the young folks that applied today. That was cool.
It was. It was.
Yes.
One of the things I'd like to say is that I nominated somebody, didn't get anywhere with it, but I felt that this is an area where experience is needed, but I think I'm quite happy with what we wound up doing. Experience, these people all knew their chops, but Some of them I'd like to see new blood, but this one I think they.
Yeah, and Gil, I think,
Good,
you know.
good to have some
Gil's done a wonderful
experience still
job.
there.
He's still there. He's still not going to leave.
Yeah. He's on the.
Right, I recognize that,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's on the other board.
So you're saying we had it both ways?
All right, both ways. Okay,
Can I
anything
make
else on
just
this?
a comment on that?
Sure, sure.
So I don't know, I do want to recognize Gil, however. So just as a comment, I don't know if we, 21 years or something of his service, I don't know if we, now we do the employee appreciation. I think we should maybe do that on boards and commissions for people that have served 15 years, 20 years. You know, I don't know, just a thought that
That's a good thought, and, you know.
I really appreciate Gil and all of his work, and I think the big issue for us was we need to train some others to do the next 12 years like Gil did, right? And so he can still be a mentor for someone, I'm hoping, that we just appointed, but I would like to thank him for his service.
Well, if it's okay with the board, I'll sit down and see if I can work up
I like that.
a certificate or something like that that can give recognition for that and go from there, so.
Since we're having this discussion and they all left, I don't know who contacts them or how that works, but in the interest of talking of this through, I was impressed with all of them. I was actually particularly impressed with Mark because when he didn't know, he just said so. And my mother taught me, if you don't know, don't fake it. So they all did well.
Yeah, and so everybody knows what happens, John. I mean, those who are elected from this board, we send out a certificate of election to them, or a certificate of appointment is what it really is. And then for those who didn't get selected, we do a letter from us to them. I sign those letters. But I think, Lori, you make a good point that, you know, for those who've gone over and above, as Gil has, let me see if I can get something special done, and that's a good move. All right, all right. Anything else on this topic? Are you ready? You want to come? You want to have lunch and come back?
Sure, I got all
No, I'm kidding. Go for it.
All right, we'll make this quick. So, proposals are due for the city solid waste RFP on August 21st. August 24th is the Hope Fest at the Carson Tahoe Cancer Center. And the community flu vaccinations and a point of dispensing, or it's called the pod usually by the health department. That exercise, it's for emergency situations. Those will be held in the parking lot north of the DMV on October 6th. Next is community development. So permit valuation for July was 9.66 million for a total year-to-date amount of 50.8 million. 30 million is residential, 5 million is new commercial, and 15.2 is a commercial remodel and miscellaneous. Then for the month of July, 13 single-family detached housing permits were issued. That's for a total of 124 residential permits for the calendar year. The total for last year, 2017, was 140. So these next few slides are scheduled for review by the Planning Commission on August 29th. This one is a special use permit to allow a gaming establishment, the Lucky Strike Casino, on property zoned retail commercial, and to allow an increase in permitted freestanding sign height from 20 feet to 30 feet. This is the former Grandma Hattie's property. The next one is a special use permit to allow a church on property zone general office. This is the former Greater Nevada Credit Union property, and the Salvation Army is looking to move here from their Colorado Street location. The next one is a master plan amendment and zoning map amendment to change the designations of this property from industrial and general industrial to commercial and tourist commercial. And they are rezoning to be able to construct an RV park on the site. This next item, this is Lampa Ranch East, and this is actually being pulled from the Planning Commission meeting in August. So planning is still working with the applicant to resolve issues related to stormwater, so that they've decided to pull that from this month's meeting. Next is the IFC activity for 3 weeks, the 3-week period from July 11th to August 1st, and for the most part, we are just filling a lot of vacant positions.
I'm just wondering, can you do us a favor in the future and just tell us how many vacant positions we have? So like, did we have 50 vacant and that's filling 10? Just for information. I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, there's been a lot of activity recently. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. So.
It's certainly reflective of our current economy.
All right, the only other thing we had was the IT department came to us, just, an in-case scenario to purchase Mimecast, which is spam filter and email archiving solutions. Their current solutions are reaching their end of life, and plus they will not support the deployment of the Office 365. And so they think they should be able to cover this expense in the current year. This was just in case we need to do an augmentation in June. And next year, for fiscal 20, they'll prepare a supplemental request to go through the budget process.
Has everybody on the board taken or completed their cyber course?
I have not.
Yeah, I've done mine.
Go.
I did mine.
Okay, all right. I think it takes a little bit of time, but
Yeah, it does.
it's worthwhile doing. I mean, I just got one this morning when I was just checking emails this morning, and I had one that says, contact your IT department. I thought that was one of their fake ones they're sent out to make sure that I'm still awake.
I can't even tell.
Yeah, I'll let them know to resend it to you guys, but I think people are deleting them because they're afraid it's not
That's right,
a
they
legitimate
are.
email, so.
I can't tell which one's real or not
Yeah,
real.
right.
I've gotten a ton from Bob here lately.
Yeah,
So I didn't even know what.
Yeah, you're sending me a ton.
I got
And-
2 yesterday.
Yeah, me
What am I sending
too.
you?
It's just your email address has been hacked, and so we just get a link.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just telling you, they look like it's him. So we're having a,
You know,
We're having a
on
tough
this
time.
on this cyber program, what you can do is you can, click on my name if I'm a sender on it, and it'll, well, it won't do that though, because
it says it's from you.
somebody hacked. Huh.
We can do some sort of training, short training on.
One of them I caught wasn't a .org, the other one was.
What
So I was like-
email address is that coming from me, do you know?
One of them was your city one, and the other one said a .com, so I knew that was wrong.
Okay.
So, like you
Wow.
said, I tried hovering over, but it's like,
Well, I'm sorry if you guys getting all my spam stuff. I wonder who else is getting it, but
yeah. Anyway,
What-
so
what-
it's
what a
getting
world.
tough. Can we put some code in there so we know they're authentic? I don't know, some little,
Yeah, I'll talk to them and see if there's something that they can
yeah, that
do
we'll
to-
know that's a real one, because it's,
I think the general
the color of the day is green.
If you get an email and it only has a link in it,
Oh, I never
you
do
just
those.
delete it.
Straight links, but it'll say something like, please review such and such, and it's got his formal stuff. I don't know, maybe the color of the day is green. I don't
all right, go.
Figure it
Sorry, Nancy, I stepped on your,
Nope, that was it.
okay.
But it's a tough one.
Anything else? Any on board issues? Anybody?
Yeah, not an issue. I want to say, what a wonderful thing, again, this year, Jazz and Beyond has been, and yet by the same token, say I would encourage anybody who wants to go out of the city all the way to Bowers Mansion this weekend, where they're having a bluegrass festival. I just happen to be a nut about bluegrass, and it's kind of fun. It costs you $30 or $25 if you already bought a ticket, and bring your chair. But if you don't care for bluegrass, I probably won't see you.
Well, and tomorrow night, the Air Force Band of the Golden West is going to be, you have to have a ticket, but it's a free ticket, but that'll be in the community center here.
And
at
the art opening here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can get back from Bowers Mansion for that if my dog hasn't exhausted me.
All right, also, I want to mention that with respect to the homeless issues, I've asked the staff and there's nothing to bring back to the board yet, but I've asked them to put some brain power into what are some steps we should be taking or thinking about taking with respect to homeless issues. And I think most of you know that I've reached out to the surrounding counties about what they're doing, because it seems to me that, we're kind of the catch basin in a way from all our surrounding counties for homeless folks. And not certain, so anyway, we need to make sure that we're dealing with these things on a regional basis. So I've asked them to come back and, give us some thoughts on what's going on out there. Why is there an increase in the homeless? Where are they coming from? And, some first steps as to, how we can address it. And I'm not certain that there's any particular way, but I do think we need to think through what's happening out there right now, because this looks like a problem that's not, it's an issue that's not going to go away. So anyway, we'll see what they come up with, okay? Anything else? All right. Then are we ready to adjourn? All right, unless there's an objection, we're adjourned.